Chapter 507, Heaven and Earth Tao Fruit. Celestial beings. Guan could hear the divine exotic immortal spirit's heart voice. Although he could maintain spiritual communication with it, he rarely paid attention to it. The main reason was that the divine exotic immortal spirit was too annoying. Guan had responded before, and as a result, it chattered constantly, bothering him without end. Guan was neither worried about Liya going to seize the sword, nor was he afraid that Liya would cause any trouble for him. He would only save Liya's life, but wouldn't help him seize the sword. Saving a life was not difficult for Guan, as simple as blowing out a breath. Guan continued fishing until, after an hour, he finally stood up and left. The blood prison great saint hurriedly followed his pace, while Chen Chuan continued to stay by the lake, his eyes tightly closed, comprehending his own sword intent. He wanted to resist the attraction of that sword, feeling that if he could withstand it, his sword Dao would ascend a level. Tens of miles away, and Xingtian was practicing qi absorption on a cliff, the breeze blowing through his hair. Another 10 miles ahead, his master Jianghu was sowing seeds. Jianghu didn't use spells but planted them by hand, treating it as a form of cultivation. Looking to the east, the celestial demon child was discussing the Tao with the ghost mother of ephemera, exchanging cultivation insights. Others were in seclusion within their respective cave mansions, all steadfastly advancing on their own paths of cultivation. The winds rolling through the Taoist field of the beginningless swept toward the celestial vault, carrying away the seasons. By the next late summer, the battle over the divine sword inevitably erupted. The sword drew sword cultivators from all over, and Liya, at the Nirvana realm, couldn't even get involved. Let alone having Guan save him, he didn't even have the qualification to see the divine sword. The battle between two divine immortals of wondrous dharma prevented him and the divine exotic immortal spirit from moving forward, forcing them to wait in the distance. Sadly, as time passed, Liya not only couldn't advance but was also pushed back because higher-level sword cultivators joined the fray. The setting sun cast a pall over an opulent city where Zhu Shi, dressed in yellow robes, strolled along the street. She looked just as young as ever, like a girl of 16 or 17, her eyes shining as she looked around with interest. No one could have imagined that this seemingly innocent girl was the Xingtian of the Holy Court, once the strongest being of heaven and earth. Just as Zhu Shi became engrossed with the sights on either side of the street, a figure approached her. "Young friend, please halt." A laugh came from ahead, and Zhu Shi fixed her gaze before stopping in her tracks. She saw a young monk draped in a kasaya blocking her path. This person was none other than the immortal seeker who had taught the Taoist expansion skill. It was because the Taoist expansion skill had advanced to the innate reincarnation skill that Guan was able to help the people he cared about extend their ultimate lifespan. Zhu Zai's smile vanished and she calmly looked at the immortal seeker. The immortal seeker chuckled. "The humble monk observes that you possess extraordinary destiny. Would you like to ascend to immortality? The humble monk can assist you." Zhu Shi focused on him, saying, "You, a monk, refer to yourself as humble monk? Do you think you're credible?" Of course the humble monk is credible. His Majesty Saint Heaven is nurtured by the celestial spirit and destiny. Even as a reincarnated being, a pair of eyes can see through everything, can't they? The immortal seeker said with a chuckle, causing Zhu Shi to furrow her brow. When he mentioned Saint Heaven, a passing cultivator threw a suspicious glance at him, but quickly disappeared with the flow of the crowd. Zhu Shi and the immortal seeker faced each other amidst the throng. They were out of place in this world and indifferent to the gazes of the people. Zhu Zai's eyes gradually became piercing, as if she had transformed into someone else. She exuded the aura of someone who reigned supreme, looking down at the immortal seeker, asking, "A person from heaven?" The immortal seeker laughed, "Your Majesty is indeed formidable." Zhu Shi lifted her right foot and took a step forward. As her toes touched the ground, the world suddenly changed. The streets and the people coming and going all vanished, and they found themselves in a dim, desolate mountain wilderness, with dense clouds in the sky and faint thunder rumbling. Immortal Seeker did not panic and continued to smile at Zhu Shi. "Are you sure you have what I'm looking for?" Zhu Shi asked, and as she lifted her right hand, the earth around them split open, and roots emerged from all directions, swiftly intertwining in the sky to form a huge sword that pointed straight at Immortal Seeker. This wooden sword was more colossal than the mountains between heaven and earth. It seemed to occupy half of the sky upon its appearance. "You're looking for the heaven and earth Tao fruit. What you want isn't just to unify the current celestial spirit great world, is it? What you desire is the entire celestial spirit great world, right?" Immortal Seeker answered. Zhu Shi narrowed her eyes but did not respond. Immortal Seeker continued, the heaven and earth Tao fruit is bound to appear sooner or later, but now there's already a presence stronger than even the free immortal. Your Majesty, how will you snatch it then? Zhu Shi huffed. So you're saying, you can't give me anything and you've merely come to remind me? Not at all, Immortal Seeker said leisurely. I have come to save your life. The celestial Tao golden core is bait left by the person from the world gate, and the heaven and earth Tao fruit is even more taboo. If one's realm is insufficient, merely touching the heaven and earth Tao fruit will lead to being devoured. It contains even more horrifying cause and effect, causes even the person from the world gate does not know of. Zhu Shi squinted and asked, then tell me how high must one's realm be to touch it? To reach the pinnacle of what the free immortal can achieve. Immortal Seeker's smile turned mischievous. Zhu Shi frowned and asked, above the ninth heaven of the immortal path, there's still the level of free immortal? That's right. There are 3 free immortal levels above it, and none of those strongest beings who appeared in the last few thousand years have reached that realm, not even the supporting Tao Sword Venerable. Hearing Immortal Seeker mention the supporting Tao Sword Venerable, Zhu Zai's face became grim. Even though she had fully recovered the memories of her previous life, she still kept the gratitude of this life's mentor-disciple relationship in her heart and respected Guan from her core. In her view, Guan was an old predecessor from beyond the skies, with a cultivation level far surpassing hers, coupled with the fact that he had taught her, she naturally held respect for him. Even the supporting Tao Sword Venerable was not qualified to touch the heaven and earth Tao fruit? Zhu Shi fell into silence. Immortal Seeker quietly watched her. After a long while he finally said, I have a method that can help you avoid being devoured. Zhu Shi looked up at him with a skeptical face. Immortal Seeker continued, what you need to do is surpass the 9 heavens of the immortal path, possess the competence to traverse the world freely. Can you achieve that? Zhu Shi replied coldly, I have long been able to do so, but I've deliberately suppressed my realm. I can sense an almighty existence outside this world watching me. If I break through, I will encounter unexpected disasters. Some free immortals need thousands, tens of thousands of cycles of reincarnation tribulations, but I only need 1 life. Immortal Seeker was taken aback, clearly shocked by her words. He took a deep breath and said in admiration, worthy of being the child of heaven and earth chosen by the destiny of celestial spirit. In that case I will pass on a cultivation technique to you. Practice it first, then break through. Zhu Zai's right hand dropped, and the huge wooden sword suspended in the dim celestial vault dissipated like smoke and clouds. Who exactly are you and why do you want to help me? Zhu Shi stared intently at Immortal Seeker, hoping to get an answer. Immortal Seeker turned, looking towards the horizon and said, I indeed come from above, but I do not affiliate myself with those self-important folks. The reason I assist you is merely to fulfill a wish. My disciple died in this great thousand world. Zhu Shi asked in surprise, the death of your disciple requires all this scheming? Do you need my help for revenge? Immortal Seeker glanced at her and said, merging with the heaven and earth Tao fruit will be enough to fill the regret in my heart. Zhu Zai's brows were tightly locked, still somewhat unclear. But Immortal Seeker no longer elaborated. Suddenly, Zhu Shi seemed to realize something. Her expression changed drastically as she looked incredulously at Immortal Seeker. Chapter 508 9 Extreme Sacred Heart Sword, The Legend of Yangxian Human World Peak, Heaven-Defining Peak Above. Heaven and Earth Tao Fruit. Celestials. Within the courtyard at the mountain's summit, Guan sat in a rocking chair with his eyes closed, musing to himself. Meng Lang's conversation with the Immortal Seeker had reached his ears. With his current cultivation level of innate golden immortal realm, no movement within the celestial spirit great world could escape his notice, especially concerning Zhu Shi, whom he had always been keeping an eye on. Guan had always had an impression of the Immortal Seeker but had not expected him to have such a background. What exactly was the world above like? The self-assured individuals mentioned by the Immortal Seeker, could they be the immortal gods pursuing him to the extreme? Celestial Tao Golden Core Heaven and Earth Tao Fruit. Interesting, could it be that the previous celestial spirit great world was transformed by some great power, and after the demise of that being, the world shattered, creating today's vast universe? If that was the case, what level of cultivation did that being have? Upon reaching the innate golden immortal realm, Guan's Tao Fruit could also create a world, confirming that the existence was at least of the innate golden immortal realm. However, just how high his power was difficult to gauge. Perhaps the growth of a world required time, but Guan wanted to estimate as high as possible because he would regard any powerful existence as a hypothetical enemy. He would not hold enmity towards those with whom he had no grievances, but he needed the confidence to respond. The celestial spirit god was scheming with the celestial Tao golden core, but what was being calculated by the heaven and earth Tao fruit that could devour all living beings? Suddenly, Guan felt that the celestial spirit great world, so clear and transparent in his eyes, became interesting and full of suspense. He was curious to see what storms the celestial Tao golden core and the heaven and earth Tao fruit would stir up in the years to come. Since he had decided to watch over the world's changes from within the dojo, he would not make a move lightly. Guan opened his eyes, raised his hand, and a book from inside the house flew into his hand. He had left many books in his various residences, occasionally revisiting them for new insights. He gently rocked in the rocking chair, undisturbed by anyone. A figure appeared out of nowhere in the courtyard, none other than Zhu Xinglan, the leading disciple of heaven-defining peak. With his cultivation of the 9th floor of the wandering immortal realm, he saw his master's chair swaying and took another look, then began to tend to the courtyard. He did not realize that his master was sitting in the chair. Guan did not leave either, he was simply concealed by the huge gap in their realms, allowing him to remain completely invisible to Zhu Xinglan and undetected in any way. To those of Human World Peak, they did not know Guan by name, only Meng Lang. As a great cultivator, being away for thousands or even tens of thousands of years was nothing out of the ordinary, so no one wondered about Guan's disappearance. After spending half a day on Human World Peak, Guan stepped back into the Taoist field of the beginningless Tai Tsang continent upon a barren plain. Long Qing was meditating in the air, surrounded by black qi which violently tugged at his robes. Candle Star stood on the ground, staring at him and nodding slightly, his eyes full of admiration. At that moment, Long Qing opened his eyes, looking into the distance and furrowing his brow as he asked, "What sword is this exactly?" "It's quite formidable." Candle Star turned to follow his gaze, looking toward the horizon, and said, "The 9 Extremes Sacred Heart Sword from Great Hong Sword Heaven, the first demonic sword of their sect, formed from the entire cultivation of a certain sword venerable. His soul was forged into a sword soul, which was then placed within the sacred heart sword Tao in the river of sword Tao, nurtured for countless years to take today's form. To possess this sword is to gain the power to roam the worlds unopposed." Hearing this, Long Qing in surprise asked, "A demonic sword?" "Correct. To tame this sword, one must gain the recognition of its sword soul, but the sword soul is violent and often devours the souls of its masters, so naturally, it is considered a demonic sword," Candle Star said, a hint of playfulness on his face. Narrowing his eyes, Long Qing asked, "Could it be that Great Hong Sword Heaven wants to treat the living beings of the celestial spirit great world as nourishment to feed this demonic sword?" "That's not it," Guan guessed. "It might be related to the founding ancestor of Great Hong Sword Heaven, the Sword God." Sword God. Along with the roar, Candle Star recounted the feats of Sword God Yang Pingan, and also mentioned Sword Tao Saint Ancestor Yang Xian. Long Qing listened with rapt attention, never having imagined that such formidable figures existed in other great heaven and earths. After a brief pause, Candle Star said, "The transcender who guards this great thousand world once declared that Sword Tao Saint Ancestor possessed the highest level of comprehension in this great thousand world and could even be considered an anomaly." Long Qing asked with curiosity, "Where is that Sword Tao Saint Ancestor now?" "I don't know," Candle Star admitted. "Some say he has perished, while others believe he is hidden deep within the river of Sword Tao. Because the Sacred Heart Sword Tao has merged with the river of Sword Tao, other sword cultivators from the Great Thousand Worlds can also comprehend the Sacred Heart Sword Tao. Countless sword cultivators and Sword Tao sects now look up to the Sword Tao Saint Ancestor. I too have sensed the Sacred Heart Sword Tao, and truly, it's boundlessly vast." Candle Star shook his head as he spoke, his tone filled with longing for the Sword Tao Saint Ancestor. Long Qing too began to fantasize about the Sacred Heart Sword Tao. Candle Star suddenly exclaimed with suspicion, interrupting Long Qing's thoughts. Long Qing couldn't help but turn to him and asked, "What's wrong?" Candle Star narrowed his eyes and said, "The 9 Extremes Sacred Heart Sword is about to have a master. I never expected him to come. What exactly are these old creatures seeking after reincarnating?" Long Qing was even more confused, but no matter how he inquired afterward, Candle Star refused to reveal more, merely saying that he would know in time. Although he didn't get an answer, Long Qing felt fired up. From what he'd heard from Candle Star, he learned about a vaster heaven and earth and became aware of more awe-inspiring legends and great powers. He too wanted to become an existence like them. He suddenly thought of his master. What exactly was his master's name? Supporting Dao Sword Venerable was just a title given by the Supreme Sect. His master surely had his own Dao name. Mountains stretched endlessly, and within the forests on the ridges, Leah followed an elder. The divine exotic immortal spirit on his shoulder intently watched the elder, as though fearing that the elder would stop. The elder wore white clothes under a black robe, a bright red belt wrapped around his clothing. His white hair was tied under a jade crown, and even with an aged face, he still had a noble aura. On the elder's back was a sword case with a piece of talisman paper attached, its blood-red characters faintly glowing with a cold light. The elder suddenly stopped walking, startling Leah into halting as well. "You wouldn't think of snatching the sword from me with your Nirvana realm cultivation level, would you?" The elder asked Leah without turning around. Leah took a deep breath and said, "Of course not, but having witnessed your power, I wish to take you as my master to cultivate the most powerful sword Dao." His eyes burned with fervor. The astonishing great battle he had witnessed still echoed in his mind. The image of the elder suppressing the crowd with a single sword strike made a profound impression on him. He had heard from a senior observer that among the great cultivators vying for the divine sword was a powerful being who stood at the ninth heaven of the immortal path. But when he learned such a formidable figure had taken action, he completely abandoned the thought of seizing the sword, adopting more of a spectator's mentality instead. However, the great power of the ninth heaven that he intended to observe ended up defeated, and the defeat was an utter disaster. After the elder left with the divine sword, Leah could still feel the divine sword's guidance, and so he followed. How could the elder not notice his pursuit? When Leah actually managed to keep up, he started to feel hopeful, thinking that perhaps the other party wanted to give him a chance. The elder turned to face Leah and said, "To take me as your master is not impossible. The karma on you is complex, as if someone has altered your fate. Precisely because of that, you should have better comprehension towards the Tao of karma and destiny. I might even pass on this 9 extreme sacred heart sword to you." "But," Leah immediately asked, "but what?" Hearing that he could possess the sword, his breathing quickened. Chapter 509, Sword Annihilation Ancestor, Imperial Authority Mythology. "However, to inherit my Taoist lineage and bear my karma means you will obtain unparalleled power, but you will have difficulty finding peace for the rest of your life." The old man stared at Leah, speaking slowly and deliberately, his gaze icy cold. Leah was frightened by his eyes. He didn't answer right away but instead carefully reflected on his life. Although he had faced hardships, he always felt that his current status was entirely due to the aid of others. In the first half of his life, his imperial father had shielded and protected him. Later, Guan, under another identity, had protected him and taught him swordsmanship. When would he be able to repay these people? Leah found himself caught in a difficult decision. He feared that he would mess things up and that, in the end, Guan would have to rescue him. He couldn't help but turn his head to look at the divine exotic immortal spirit resting on his shoulder. This time, the divine exotic immortal spirit remained silent, merely looking at him steadily as if to say, "This time it's up to you to decide." Leah believed that the old man had no intention of deceiving him, for there was no need. The gulf between their cultivation levels was vast, and if the old man truly wished to force him to do something, he would have no power to resist. As Leah hesitated, the old man turned and walked away. Leah fell to his knees and kowtowed in the direction of the old man's retreating figure, shouting loudly, "Master above, please accept your disciple's bow." The old man stopped in his tracks and then slowly turned around. He looked at Leah with an expressionless face and said, "Remember, my Taoist name is Sword Annihilation. Many refer to me as the Sword Annihilation Ancestor." Having said this, the Sword Annihilation Ancestor continued to walk away, and Leah quickly got up and followed his pace. Excitement was unmistakable on Leah's face. He stared at the back of the Sword Annihilation Ancestor, with many questions he wanted to ask, but he restrained himself. There is plenty of time ahead. Having seen the Sword Annihilation Ancestor's actions, he felt that the Sword Annihilation Ancestor was a rare existence that could match up to Guan. Of course, it was only his feeling because he thought the Sword Annihilation Ancestor didn't use his full strength when he claimed the 9 extremes sacred heart sword with such an ease and calmness. Such demeanor reminded him of Guan when he transformed into the supporting Dao sword venerable. Little did he know, Guan was listening in on his thoughts secretly. Comparing me to the Taoist Zhang Zizai Immortal? Guan, who was picking medicinal herbs in the Taoist field of the beginningless, laughed, but this Sword Annihilation Ancestor had quite a reputation. He must have an even stronger true form. Guwen had encountered his true form before, back when he had broken through to become the profound Yuan-free immortal. At that time, the skull that devoured the free immortal had made a lasting impression on Guwen. The aura of that skull was identical to that of the Sword Annihilation ancestor, and from the perspective of karma, they originated from the same source. The mere fact that a clone possessed the cultivation level of a Taoist Zhang Zizai immortal made him wonder just how powerful the Sword Annihilation ancestor's true form was. Ever since Guwen defeated the battle court, the celestial spirit great world seemed to be distancing itself from the catastrophe of outer heaven. In reality, more beings of the Tao fruit realm had infiltrated the celestial spirit great world, behaving more covertly, probably out of fear of Guwen. Every choice has its pros and cons. His own lifespan reincarnation had left behind unfavorable karma, but within the life he could control, he had always done good deeds. He was satisfied with that and never tired of it. Guwen's mood became increasingly cheerful, and he began to give pointers to the ghost mother of ephemera following him. Although the ghost mother of ephemera had lost her freedom, she did not slack off because she saw greater hope. She even felt that her current life was better and more meaningful than before. Pursuing longevity, that was far more meaningful than being a vice-sect hierarch. The ghost mother of ephemera made note of every word Guwen said and pondered them deeply. Guwen knew what she was thinking, but he never spelled it out. He let her muse wildly, thinking maybe she might stumble upon something significant. An hour later, Guwen finished picking herbs, and then he had the ghost mother of ephemera sow the seeds while he walked to his own loft, ready to take a nap. Even innate golden immortals can sleep, and Guwen occasionally enjoyed dreaming, finding enlightenment in his dreams a particularly interesting experience. The white clouds above drifted slowly, yet in the blink of an eye, one might feel they moved quickly. The passage of time in the human world is the same. 1,000 years, like those clouds, is both fast and slow. It seems quick to cultivators but slow to mortals. On an early summer day at high noon. In the Tai Tsang dynasty within the Zhangzhou imperial city. In the imperial study, Li Xiandao held a petition, his face expressionless. He had been the emperor for over 4,000 years. His long-standing and domineering rule had become mythologized in the hearts of the people. The commoners were unfamiliar with the name supporting Tao Sword Venerable, unaware of the great cultivators of the immortal cultivation realm. In their eyes he was a living immortal. At this moment 2 people were kneeling in the room, their heads bowed and bodies tense, one of them sweating profusely on the forehead. After a while Li Xiandao looked up. He glanced at the 2 kneeling before him and asked, "What is the Crown Prince's opinion on the Yang family's actions?" One of the elderly ministers raised his head to look at Li Xiandao, hesitated for a moment and said, "His Highness did not respond to us, but one of my spies told me that the Crown Prince once said he found the position of Crown Prince rather dull, and he did not know." He did not know what? He did not know what it tastes like to sit on the imperial throne. After speaking, the old minister quickly bowed his head, pressing his forehead against the ground. Li Xuando's eyes flashed with a chill upon hearing this. He closed the petition he was holding and set it down gently. "Leave," Li Xiandao said with closed eyes. The 2 ministers immediately stood up, performed a salutary bow and left quickly. Once they had left the imperial garden and the palace grounds, and only when they had passed through the gates of the imperial city, did they finally breathe a sigh of relief. The other middle-aged minister turned to the old one and asked in a low voice, "Does His Highness truly intend to?" He looked around and withheld the word rebel. There have been signs for hundreds of years. It is said that ever since the Crown Prince returned from the Holy Land, his temperament has changed. He has already stepped into the immortal realm. I fear the imperial dynasty is about to face unprecedented turmoil. The Yang family has courted no small number of factions. The old minister sighed. His ancestors had served Li Xiandao for 10 generations and he himself had been an academically honored champion designated by Li Xiandao. In his heart, Li Xiandao was the heavens. But faced with a crown prince who possessed the cultivation level of the immortal Tao and had a formidable family background, how could he not think that the throne was on the cusp of changing hands? The middle-aged minister fell silent after hearing this, and they both hastened down the same street. Meanwhile, back in the imperial study, Li Xiandao slowly opened his eyes, gazing straight ahead and suddenly said, "Guwen, supporting Tao Sword Venerable, you should be able to hear my words, right?" After his words, silence filled the room. No response came from outside. He took a deep breath, stood up, walked around the desk and then, lifting the hem of his robe, knelt on the ground. "Guwen, if there is still any affection between us, please help me," Li Xiandao said with a resolute expression. He then began to kowtow. However, just as his forehead was about to touch the ground, a hand caught his forehead, preventing it from touching the floor. Li Xuando's pupils contracted and his body trembled slightly. With great caution, he slowly lifted his head to see the person in front of him. It was indeed Guan. Chapter 510 The number 1 genius Guan looked at Li Xiandao, who knelt before him, and felt quite moved. At the beginning of his cultivation, Li Xiandao had given him a lot of support. Although at that time, Guan had already been able to fend for himself, Li Xiandao treated him as a junior without knowing his true cultivation level. Throughout their interactions, Li Xiandao had never bullied him and was always so kind to him. The end of the world valley provided by Li Xiandao was also an important part of Guan's income in the first half of his life. The valley had been planted with high-tier cultivation herbs from the start, which were extremely significant for Guan before he reached 100 years old. Additionally, Li Xiandao had treated Yi Yan, Yang Jian and Wuxia quite well, so Guan had always had a good impression of Li Xiandao. He felt that there was a bond of sentiment between him and Li Xiandao. Their conversations were always delightful. It's just that Li Xiandao, as the emperor, was too busy and they seldom met. The last time they had met was more than 2,000 years ago. Li Xiandao had already achieved nirvana, but he displayed a cultivation level of integration realm. He had his own network of connections, but compared to the Yang family behind Li Lingtian and his mother, the forces he had gathered were not as strong. "Rise," Guan said softly, looking at the stunned Li Xiandao, and then he lifted him up. After Li Xiandao stood up, he took a deep breath and said, "You really didn't leave." Guan smiled and responded, "It seems we truly are people of the same path. You know what I'm thinking." Hearing this, Li Xiandao knew that Guan had seen through his hidden cultivation. He wasn't too surprised, considering how high Guan's cultivation level was. "Let's sit down and talk." Guan gestured with his hand and Li Xiandao nodded, then turned and walked to the table. Once they were both seated, Li Xiandao looked across at Guan, who seemed like an immortal monarch in the flesh, and felt somewhat dazzled. A mix of emotions flooded him. He was surprised, relieved, and felt undeservingly favored. He hadn't expected that he could actually summon Guan. Guan had abandoned the supreme sect but not him. How could he not be moved? "Tell me, how can I help you?" Guan asked. Even though he could guess the answer, he wanted to hear it from Li Xiandao himself. This process would also help Li Xiandao ease his emotions. Li Xiandao took a deep breath and began to recount his predicament. As Li Lingtian grew older, he became restless with his position as crown prince, and the Yang family behind the empress became increasingly impatient, constantly inciting conflict. A talent had emerged from the Yang family and had been taken into the holy court at the human world peak, a place far more formidable than all sects within the Broken Sea domain. Li Xuando's hidden cultivation level was nothing compared to the human world peak. It wasn't Li Lingtian that Li Xiandao feared but the human world peak. Guan listened patiently. After Li Xiandao finished speaking, he remarked, "That kid Li Lingtian has never been a quiet one since he was young, but that's normal. Being born into the imperial dynasty, how could he not aspire for imperial power?" Li Xuando's face turned slightly awkward as he admitted, "Indeed, I can't blame him. But the struggle for imperial power relies on one's own means. At least under my rule, the Taizong dynasty has always been developing well." That was indeed true. The Taizong dynasty had enjoyed thousands of years of peace, and while a prosperous age could harbor many internal conflicts, Li Xiandao always managed to resolve them well. Guan didn't feel that Li Xiandao should give up his throne. As long as the people of the Taizong dynasty were doing well and Li Xuando's lifespan was long, he indeed could keep sitting on his throne. Li Xiandao looked at Guan, his heart uneasy. In his eyes, the human world peak posed no threat to Guan, yet there really was no need for Guan to help him against the human world peak. Even if Li Xiandao offered everything he had, it probably wouldn't catch Guan's interest. Guan then spoke, "How about this, I'll have Yang Jian come and help you and from now on serve you. How does that sound?" He arranged this because Yang Jian recently wanted to leave the holy court and, conveniently, Yang Jian was the first person to defeat Li Lingtian, so their fated rivalry could be prolonged. Even to this day, Li Lingtian was still using Yang Jian as a benchmark. Upon hearing this, Li Xuando's eyes brightened and he asked, "Really? Can it be done?" He was very fond of Yang Jian. From the first sight of him, he wanted to win him over. That's why he had previously gathered the imperial dynasty's resources to forge an appropriate divine weapon for Yang Jian. "Of course, he'll arrive in a few days," Guan said with a smile. He believed Li Xiandao could go even further. No matter how the future evolved for all beings, a situation with many strong contenders was better. If the whole world were to be ruled by a single power, it would be prone to troubles. Just like before when the Holy Court ruled the world, demon cultivators could slaughter the people of an entire region, and the truth could be easily suppressed by the Saint King. Therefore, with such thoughts in mind, Guan also hoped that the Taizong dynasty could endure and prosper further. Of course, he would only facilitate and mediate, never intervene directly. In fact, Yang Jian had a good impression of Li Xiandao, and it could be beneficial for both if they teamed up. Li Xiandao, after hearing Guan's promise, felt extremely cheerful, as if all the frustrations in his heart had been swept away. He already knew that Yang Jian had regained his Saint King status, and the current Yang Jian could help him counter the human world peak, or at least human world peak would give face to Yang Jian. How have these years been for you? Guan continued, beginning to make small talk with Li Xiandao. Li Xiandao did not hide anything, sincerely sharing his experiences, and the two seemed to return to the times of 4,000 years ago in the end of the world valley, chatting with great joy. A full hour had passed before Guan finally took his leave. Watching Guan come and go like the wind, leaving not the slightest trace of his presence, Li Xiandao sincerely sighed. He is a true immortal. No sooner had his words fallen than Guan had already arrived at human world peak. Guan summoned Zhu Xinglan, instructing him to settle the matter, forbidding anyone from intervening in the internal strife of the Taizong dynasty. Zhu Xinglan immediately set out to handle the task. Without needing to use his status as the supporting Dao Sword Venerable, Guan could still easily have the matter resolved. The Yang family was considered powerful in the Broken Sea domain, but within human world peak they couldn't reach the top echelon. Having given his instructions, Guan then rested in the courtyard. After a while, Zhu Xinglan came back, delighted to see his master had returned. Guan was very satisfied with his dedication over the years and imparted divine skills to him, making Zhu Xinglan even more overjoyed. In the Taizong dynasty within a mansion, Li Lingtian sat at the head of the room, his face full of impatience. There were over a dozen people standing in the hall, discussing how to instigate a coup, even arguing over it. Li Lingtian was truly fed up and couldn't help but say, "Enough, no matter what, he is still my father, the emperor. At most, he'll seize power, but it's impossible to harm him." As soon as these words came out, everyone fell silent and then looked towards him. Li Lingtian was incredibly talented and presently had the cultivation level of the immortal Dao realm. His presence was strong enough to command attention. Do you not realize what imperial power means to your father, the emperor? A struggle for the throne cannot be without casualties. An imposing voice came from outside the hall as a man in white walked in with the sunlight behind him. People turned their heads to look, all showing expressions of joyful surprise. An elder, thrilled, said, "Yang'an, you've finally returned." Yang'an, the top talent of the Yang family and a disciple of human world peak. He was handsome and elegant, with an extraordinary demeanor. His mere entrance was enough to dissipate Li Lingxian's aura. Li Lingtian frowned slightly as he looked at Yang'an. He resented and was wary of Yang'an. Everyone made way as Yang'an approached Li Lingtian, slightly raising his chin, looking down upon him and said, "The Yang family wants to make you emperor, this is your honor. You shouldn't be indecisive." Li Xiandao, when he took the throne, had stained his hands with the blood of many of his brothers and sisters. Chapter 5:11 You are not worthy of the name, and Yang An's words won the approval of the other people in the hall. They spoke in turn, continuing to persuade Li Lingtian, hoping he could let go of a woman's kindness. He must be ruthless in his actions, or else it would be easy to run into trouble. The more they agreed, the more irked Li Lingtian became. A bunch of Yang surname people forcing him, of the Li surname, to kill someone with the same surname? He wanted to curse loudly, but he was no longer the impulsive youth he once was. He had to maintain his relationship with the Yang family. The Yang family had provided him with too many cultivation resources, too many for him to cut ties with. The reason he wanted to become emperor was precisely because he could not gather the force of the Taizong dynasty for his own gains. No matter how high his talent might be, he still needed heavenly materials and earthly treasures and opportunities to push his cultivation faster. There were as many geniuses in this world as there were innumerable stars. He was not the brightest among them. Li Lingxian's complexion grew increasingly unsightly, and Yang'an did not stop the others from admonishing him. Instead, he watched Li Lingtian with great interest. His reason for coming was not merely to support Li Lingtian. In the eyes of the Yang family, their seizing the throne was already a done deal. What they needed to do was suppress Li Lingtian and make the imperial authority a plaything in the hands of the Yang family. When did the Yang family become the masters of the Taizong dynasty? How is it that I, who am also surnamed Yang, do not know this? A resounding voice echoed through heaven and earth, reaching the ears of everyone in the hall. Before they could react, a figure, glittering with silver light, appeared out of nowhere beside Yang and glanced over and his pupils suddenly dilated. The blade's edge was at his throat, making his body feel like it was in a cold cellar, chilled to the bone. Standing beside Yang was a man clad in silver armor, his left hand gripping a three-pointed double-bladed saber, its blade horizontal in front of him, pressed against Yang throat. His posture was so casual that it brought an indescribable shock to everyone present. Li Lingtian stared at Yang Jian, his eyes widening and his mouth opening involuntarily. "It's you?" Li Lingtian could never forget Yang Jian. The two had spent many years together and he had often sparred with Yang Jian, never winning once. How many years had it been? He had fantasized about the scene of meeting with Yang Jian again, but he had never imagined it would be under these circumstances. After a brief silence, a female cultivator of the Yang family couldn't help but ask, "Who are you?" The others hastily took out their magic artifacts. Even though they were frightened by the Yang family, they had no intention to run because this was the Yang family's ground, and their descendants were outside. They could not flee. Yang looked at Yang Jian, sweating profusely. He was locked in by Yang Jian's intent to kill, his mana frozen, unable to mobilize it. He couldn't see through Yang Jian's cultivation level at all. But one thing was certain. He was no match for this person. Yang Jian glanced at Yang and said, "Given your connections with Li Lingtian, put away your delusions." His gaze then shifted to Li Lingtian, his eyes indifferent. "Kid, nobody can touch your father's imperial seat, including you. Don't forget the ambitions you told me about. How did you end up so vulgar?" On hearing this, Li Lingtian's face turned red, but he had no rebuttal. Because he once told Yang Jian that he wanted to become the #1 cultivator in the world, he wanted to pursue longevity and immortality, not to be some prince or crown prince. However, as his realm grew higher, he felt increasing resistance, and he couldn't help but ponder worldly possessions. "Who are you really? The person you are holding is from the human world peak. You had better weigh your options," another middle-aged cultivator said through gritted teeth. Yang Jian glanced at him, his eyes so cold that it terrified the man, who instinctively stepped back. The human world peak is formidable, and their peak master, the Taoist monarch of eternal years, is indeed a great power. I have discussed the Tao with him. "Oh, that's right, I am Yang Jian, the Candle World Saint King from the Holy Court. Have any of you heard of me?" Yang Jian's words made everyone's complexion change dramatically. The Saint King of the Holy Court. The cultivators of the Yang family were so frightened that they knelt down, foreheads to the ground, begging for Yang Jian's forgiveness. Li Lingtian sat stunned in his chair. Although he was puzzled as to why Yang Jian had become a Saint King, he was very clear about one thing. In front of the Holy Court, the human world peak was nothing. Yang Jian's gaze moved back to Yang En, making Yang En's Tao heart tremble. "You are not worthy of the name, and from today on, change your name," Yang Jian said with an unquestionable tone. Yang En's throat bobbed as he involuntarily uttered a word, "Okay." Seeing Yang Jian easily suppress the Yang family, Li Lingtian's mouth opened slightly, a sense of overwhelming defeat welling up inside him. The gap between him and Yang Jian was getting bigger and bigger. The seasons of the human world cycled, and early autumn had arrived once again. In the woods outside the Taoist field of the beginningless, Guan lay on a tree branch, dappled sunlight speckling his face as he examined his attribute panel. Name, Guan, lifespan, 4,458/50,802,675,392, physique, primordial infinite body, cultivation level, innate golden immortal realm perfection, 50 billion years of lifespan. He had reached halfway to 100 billion. This was the accumulation Guan had achieved without massive slaughter or causing any upheaval, yet his lifespan had grown rapidly. Given such an advantage, he naturally did not have to struggle and risk his life like the common folks in the mortal coil. Because of this, he had to be more careful and cautious, never arrogant. Beneath the tree, Celestial Cyan and Tian Bai were practicing their swordsmanship, a dual-blade harmony technique created by Guan for them. The two women were vigorously immersed in their practice, while the celestial demon child was in the midst of a deep, extended cultivation retreat. "It's been a while since I've initiated a lifespan reincarnation. Should I give it a go?" Suddenly feeling an urge, Guan felt that his understanding of the Great Tao had slowed doan recently, and he needed a new stimulus. Lifespan reincarnation was the perfect way. Even with its risks, they wouldn't immediately affect him in reality. A gamble. It had been many years since the last one. It was time. With a thought, Guan immediately initiated the lifespan reincarnation. You have expended 10 million years of lifespan to commence a session of reincarnation evolution. Starting to connect to Tao rules, searching for reincarnation worlds, you have the following worlds to choose from. Select 1. 1. Celestial Spirit Great World. 2. Great World of the Heavenly Tome. 3. Dark Great World. Great World? Heavenly Tome? Guan was drawn to the second option, but why did he feel like this world existed within the pages of a book? If so, he might encounter terrifying beings akin to the celestial spirit god. Forget it, better not meddle with the great worlds for now. 10 million years was not a small number to him. He'd have to work hard for half a year to attain it. Guan's gaze settled on the dark great world. Ever since Yang Xian defeated the Black Profound Emperor, Guan was no longer so cautious of him. This time he could attempt to confront the Black Profound Emperor again, to personally vanquish him. Having made his choice, a series of prompts appeared before his eyes. You have chosen to reincarnate into the dark great world. Considering the Tao rules of this world cannot conceal your talent, you will retain the ability to seize lifespan but cannot activate stage-specific functions. Reincarnation evolution begins. In the first year you are born in a town within the Western Extreme Domain. As a newborn, the town faces a demon beast attack, your parents are killed, and you are carried away by a demon beast, only to be fortuitously rescued by a cultivator. You are named by the cultivator as Black Profound. Chapter 512. Black Profound Ascension, Profound Clear Immortal Sect Black Profound? Guan couldn't help but frown when he saw the first hint. Could Black Profound Emperor be his reincarnation body? He thought back carefully about the encounter Yang Xian had with Black Profound Emperor, who never revealed his true face, making it hard to judge. But if Black Profound Emperor was him, why would he want to kill his own reincarnation body? Guan continued to read, developing a strong curiosity about this lifetime. At 2 years old, you were taken back to the celestial dark demon sect by a cultivator, and the cultivator Luo Abyss officially took you as his disciple. At 4 years old, Luo Abyss began to teach you the cultivation technique, and you displayed extraordinary talent that shocked Luo Abyss. At 5 years old, Luo Abyss left, leaving you alone in his cave mansion. A python he was keeping broke out of its cage wanting to eat you. After a fierce battle, you killed the python and accidentally gained 30 years of lifespan, marking a turning point in your destiny. At 6 years old, you built your foundation establishment successfully with the demon core of the python. At 7 years old, Luo Abyss returned. Knowing that you had killed the python, he didn't say anything but handed you a secret manual. You took the manual and saw 5 words written on the cover: Yin-Yang Reversal Skill. The following were years of cultivation. Black Profound showed strong talent, but whether he was the strongest among the reincarnation bodies was still hard to tell. Until the age of 20, Black Profound was sent down the mountain by Luo Abyss to gain experience for a century. At 21 years old, you met an elderly Taoist. He noticed your extraordinary demeanor and wanted to tell your fortune. Do you accept? Why does every reincarnation involve such encounters? Could there be a scheme? Guan didn't believe in coincidences and he chose to refuse. You refused for the Taoist to tell your fortune. The Taoist shook his head with regret, saying that you would meet again one day. You watched his retreating back and remained silent for a long time. At 22 years old, you encountered a demon race attacking the city. Without hesitating, you joined the battle along with a group of cultivators and successfully repelled the demon race. Because of your heavy killing aura, the city's civilians kept their distance from you, and even other cultivators were wary of you. Unable to integrate, you silently left. At 23 years old, you encountered a demon cultivator committing evil acts. You eliminated the demon cultivator. The grateful mortal family from the city invited you to stay at their mansion for a few days. You agreed, and during the journey thereafter, you protected the family while defeating demons along the way. This caused the family to fear you even more. On the night before reaching the destination, you overheard them discussing how to send you away, and you left alone before dawn. At 24 years old, you came to Hanji City and heard that the city was hosting a magic battle conference. Only young talents under the age of 100 could enroll, and you decided to sign up. In the end, you defeated all the competitors, claiming first place powerfully and becoming famous citywide. At the celebration banquet, The city lord wanted to betroth his daughter to you. Do you accept? No. Although Black Profound might be the Black Profound Emperor, now it's Guan's reincarnation body, and he can't allow his reincarnation body to have any weaknesses. Finding a Tao companion is alright, but not now. You refused the city lord's goodwill, and he shook his head, chuckled, and did not persist. The very next day, you took the heavenly materials and earthly treasures you had won at the Magic Battle Conference and left. When you were about 100 miles from Hanji City, you encountered a group of mysterious cultivators who ambushed you. After a fierce battle, only one of them was left alive. Through coercion, you learned that it was the city lord's arrangement, which infuriated you. At the age of 25, you entered the demon race's forest and began slaughtering demons extensively. At the age of 26, you returned to Hanji City and made your way to the city lord's mansion where you chose to force your way in. A great battle erupted, and in the end you left the city lord's mansion full of corpses. The exhausted city lord knelt on the ground, begging for your forgiveness. His daughter also ran over, standing in front of you, hoping you would spare her father. Will you choose to forgive the city lord? Forgive what? Did the city lord ever forgive me? Guan, identifying with the role of Black Profound, also felt angered and immediately chose no. You ignored the pleas of the city lord's daughter and beheaded the city lord with a single sword strike. Then you turned and left. Under the gloomy sky, the city lord's daughter knelt on the ground, cursing you hoarsely and vowing to seek revenge in the future. You were indifferent and walked away proudly. Guan, seeing this, felt that Black Profound might have developed feelings for the girl. Through this journey, how intense Black Profound's killing intent had been, almost catching up to Longzhan. Could he actually have spared the city lord's daughter? The image of Black Profound in Guan's mind became even more nuanced, and as for the consequences of sparing the city lord's daughter, Guan was not worried. With the life-controlling Black Profound Emperor evolving rapidly, his early live's enemies would hardly impact his future. In the subsequent prompts, Black Profound clearly relied heavily on life evolution, killing relentlessly each year, even routinely slaughtering the alien race, making Guan feel his growth rate would exceed his past lives. After a century, Black Profound returned to the Celestial Dark Demon sect. At the age of 121, you returned to Luo Abyss Cave Mansion and unexpectedly learned of Luo Abyss' death, the cause being demonic possession that led him to harm his fellow sect members, and he was slain by a great cultivator from within the sect in time. You found the incident highly suspicious. While staying at the Celestial Dark Demon sect to cultivate, you began investigating the truth behind your master's death. At the age of 122, you stumbled upon another disciple of Luo Abyss within the sect. After a discussion, you opened your heart, believing that your master could not have been possessed demonically. After hesitating, the other disciple suggested that the cause of the master's death might have been offending the vice sect hierarch, giving you a direction for your investigation. At the age of 123, while you were cultivating in the cave mansion, you felt strong auras approaching. Before you could think further, the restriction of the cave mansion was broken, and a group of law enforcement disciples forcibly entered, accusing you of demonic possession and harming your fellow sect members. They attempted to execute you on the spot. After a fierce battle, you escaped but were met with more opponents. You kept killing as you fled, leaving the Celestial Dark Demon sect and heading north. At the age of 124, you arrived in the land of the North Nether. Standing on a cliff, you were awestruck by the sight of Kuan leaping from the boundless ocean, which led you into a state of profound mystery and enlightenment. At the age of 125, deep in the glacier, you discovered a mysterious cave mansion. After days of research, you successfully deciphered the clues of the restrictions left on the cave mansion. You stepped inside and, after facing 9 mechanisms, saw a stele inscribed with the words cause and effect. Feeling the dense spiritual energy within the cave mansion, you decided to go into seclusion there, planning to seek revenge on the Celestial Dark Demon sect later. At the age of 135, you entered the Mahayana realm, prepared to return to the Celestial Dark Demon sect. Just as you were about to leave, the cause and effect stele vibrated, and a powerful force absorbed you into it. You found yourself in a dimly lit cave. Turning around, you saw that the stele behind you was different from the previous cause and effect stele. It had no inscriptions and was covered in cracks and dust. No matter how you applied your powers, the stele remained inert. You chose to walk out of the cave. Outside the cave wasn't the glacier anymore but a world resembling the Immortal realm, filled with abundant spiritual energy that astounded you. Just as you were immersed in the magnificent scenes of nature, a white-robed woman resembling a fairy descended from the sky and landed beside you. You couldn't discern her cultivation level, so you were very vigilant. The white-robed woman asked if you had ascended from the lower realm, which puzzled you further. She invited you to join the profound clear immortal sect. Will you agree? Ascended? Guan had never heard of the profound clear immortal sect, but it seemed Black Profound had no other choice. If the other party harbored ill intentions, even if he refused, he would still face trouble. Why not join and see? Chapter 513 Celestial Court, God of Destruction. Guan chose to join the profound clear immortal sect, hoping that Black Profound could follow the right path within the profound clear immortal sect. Excessive killing was not a good practice. You chose to join the profound clear immortal sect, and the lady in white was pleased. She then introduced you to the profound clear immortal sect, and during the conversation you learned her name, Fairy Baisian. Under Fairy Baisian's guidance, you successfully joined the profound clear immortal sect and officially entered the profound pure great world. Profound pure great world? Guan pondered. He knew that the Great Thousand World was considered a whole universe, and the celestial spirit Great World had been part of the Great Thousand World before it shattered. Not all Great Thousand Worlds were as fragmented as the celestial spirit Great World. How strong a complete Great Thousand World was, even Guan could not judge now, for he had not witnessed it. Alerts kept popping up in front of him as Fairy Baisian introduced Black Profound to her mentor, making Black Profound her junior brother. In the years that followed, Black Profound no longer engaged in battles but practiced cultivation with his master and Fairy Baisian. The more this happened, the more uneasy Guan felt. He had a feeling that something big would happen, something very significant. Black Profound practiced in the profound clear immortal sect, spending hundreds of years as if he had forgotten the vengeance for Luo Abyss. At the age of 178, the profound clear immortal sect welcomed a Millennia Dao conference, with various teachings from all over the world coming to participate. You heard from Fairy Baisian that she admired a man known as Emperor Ziwei, a peerless prodigy. You secretly took note of this name, then inquired about Emperor Ziwei. When the Millennia Dao conference began, you went above the sea of clouds and saw the elegance of Emperor Ziwei among many disciples. This sight made you lose interest in watching the spectacle, and you returned to your cave mansion to continue in seclusion. Then came various cultivation alerts. Guan couldn't help but wonder what kind of elegance Emperor Ziwei possessed. One glance at whom had deeply affected Black Profound. Emperor Ziwei used Emperor in his name, and Black Profound later became the Black Profound Emperor. Could it be because of him? At the age of 214, Fairy Baisian found you and said she was going out for training, expecting to be gone for at least 100 years. You were worried about her and wanted to follow, but Fairy Baisian told you not to worry. Did you choose to insist on following Fairy Baisian? If it had been before, Guan would definitely have chosen no, to avoid falling into a romantic entanglement with his reincarnation body. But he remembered how Yang Xian had to bury his wife, and the two had never been together. Perhaps constantly preventing it might not be a good thing either. And in this life, Black Profound also had a tough time with no family, no friends, and even his master had died. Setting aside his prejudice against the Black Profound Emperor, Guan decided to truly treat Black Profound as himself, treating everyone equally. He chose to insist on following. You chose to insist on following Fairy Baisian. She looked at you, staring until you felt uneasy. Suddenly she smiled and said you better not hold her back. Hearing this, a smile also appeared on your face. Looking at your senior sister smiling like the bright moon in the sky, you secretly swore to protect her completely for life. At the age of 215, you followed Fairy Baisian to a sea, where you stopped on a deserted island. Fairy Baisian was preparing to collect herbs on the island, while you meditated on the beach. Later, Fairy Baisian chose to stay on the island, where she began practicing alchemy, and she would let you taste any elixirs she made. At the age of 217, you left the island and ventured further into the sea, where you encountered a human race sea ship surrounded by demon beasts. You chose to help, rarely encountering ownerless demons, unable to resist the urge to kill. Afterwards, Fairy Baisian cautioned you not to create too much slaughter. The profound clear immortal sect was not just a sect of the human race but also of all living beings without discriminating between races. You promised it wouldn't happen again. Seeing Fairy Baisian admonishing Black Profound, Guan felt that his decision was the right one. Lifespan could be considered as an aid and could be used in many ways, as long as one did not develop a killer instinct. He felt that Black Profound would not give up on lifespan, but as long as there was some restraint, it was also a good thing. Black Profound followed Fairy by Xian traveling around the world, treasure hunting, saving demons and people, exorcising ghosts, their journey brimming with excitement. The two also encountered dangers and had been seriously injured, but luckily they took care of each other and always managed to turn peril into safety. Fairy by Xian had saved Black Profound and Black Profound had also saved her. All in all, nobody truly held the other back. At 307 years old, you unexpectedly stumbled upon a battle for treasure where one party was none other than the Emperor Ziwei, whom Fairy by Xian admired. He fought alone against hundreds of strong immortal Dao cultivators and ultimately defeated them. Fairy by Xian was amazed, and even you had to admit that Emperor Ziwei was truly powerful. After the battle ended, Emperor Ziwei approached you. He obviously recognized Fairy by Xian and wished to invite her to his dojo as a guest, but she politely declined. Emperor Ziwei then turned to you and extended the invitation. Would you choose to visit his dojo? No, not going. Guan made his choice directly. He was somewhat displeased with Emperor Ziwei. Hadn't he seen Black Profound walking with Fairy by Xian? Why interfere? You chose to refuse the invitation to Emperor Ziwei's dojo. Emperor Ziwei did not insist and soon left. You turned to Fairy by Xian, asking her why she did not go. Fairy by Xian looked at him and counter-questioned why they should go. You exchanged smiles, understanding each other without words. At 308 years old, you came to the most magnificent mountain in the land, rumored to house an immortal. Deciding to seek the immortal, you began the ascent but found that you could not use your mana. You had to proceed up the mountain as mere mortals. At 309 years old, after a year's journey, you reached halfway up the mountain and saw a courtyard with an old man resting inside, holding a fan. Surprised, you recognized him as the old Taoist who had wanted to tell your fortune years ago. The Taoist also recognized you and with a smile he said it was finally time to meet, which intrigued Fairy by Xian. When she learned that you had met in the lower realm, it filled her with respect for the old Taoist. He did not say much more and threw 2 secret manuals onto the ground before returning alone to his house. You picked up the secret manuals from the ground and began to study them. At 320 years old, after 11 years of cultivation, you finally perfected one of the divine skills. The old Taoist finally came out of his house, praising you for having a destiny pattern fit for an emperor's path. However, you had suppressed your nature. This caused the still unskilled Fairy by Xian to be confused. Knowing the innate aggressiveness in your bones, Fairy by Xian fell silent, and you were also caught in a dilemma, whether to keep your promise not to kill or to follow the old Taoist's advice and embark on the emperor's path. The hint stopped there. Guan did not hesitate, choosing to keep his promise and not kill. Who persuades someone to start killing? That old Taoist is fishy. You chose to keep your promise to Fairy by Xian not to kill and not to follow the emperor's path, making Fairy by Xian very happy. The old Taoist said you would regret your decision one day. His gaze made you uncomfortable, so you made an excuse, took Fairy by Xian's hand and bid your goodbyes. At 321 years old, you and Fairy by Xian discovered the legendary divine beast, the celestial auspicious deer, in the forbidden demon forest. You received the blessing of the celestial auspicious deer, enhancing your comprehension. After surreptitiously being cursed by the old Taoist, Guan was cautious and closely watched the hints, fearing Black Profound and Fairy by Xian might encounter danger. Fortunately, they continued to encounter amazing adventures until they were over 500 years old, when both returned to the profound clear immortal sect and entered into seclusion. The next 500 years passed even quicker. Yet the event Guan feared still occurred. At 1,347 years old, while in seclusion, you felt a terrifying pressure. You immediately left your cave mansion and saw the sky darken, forming a majestic vortex of clouds, and felt an oppressive atmosphere. Soon after, you saw a pair of eyes and then heard an authoritative voice claiming he was the god of destruction from the celestial court, stating that there were unusual intrusions in this great world that must be cleansed. As his voice fell and the earth shook, you immediately went to find Fairy by Xian. You managed to find her and wanted to take her to flee, but she decided to stand or fall with the profound clear immortal sect. You were caught in an inner struggle, wondering whether to stay and protect the profound clear immortal sect. Celestial Court, God of Destruction. Guan frowned tightly. This God of Destruction might be a terrifying being like the Celestial Spirit God, and it seemed the Celestial Spirit Great World had shattered because of the Celestial Spirit God. How could the profound clear immortal sect resist such a terrifying entity? But how could Black Profound flee and still face the profound clear immortal sect? Forget it. Might as well die together. Consider the million-year lifespan wasted. To embrace death with a loved one, even if life is short, insights can still be obtained. You chose to stay and protect the profound clear immortal sect, which deeply touched Fairy Baisien. She seemed to think of something and pulled you flying to a place. On the way, you saw countless great cultivators from the profound clear immortal sect rushing toward the giant eye in the sky, only to be extinguished one after another. This sequence of events made you feel so insignificant. Following Fairy Baisien's lead, you discovered that you had come to the cave where you had first crossed into the profound pure great world. Fairy Baisien explained that the reason she had recruited you into the immortal sect at first sight was that her deceased father had claimed that this cave held an immortal fate. Someone who had once saved the profound clear immortal sect had emerged from this cave mansion. She hoped you could return to your original world. You said you didn't know how to go back when you saw Fairy Baisien pulling out a jade pendant. You felt something was wrong and tried to snatch the jade pendant, but Fairy Baisien forcibly pushed you into the cave. She then threw the jade pendant after you into the cave. You felt a familiar and long-missed powerful force behind you. Looking back from afar, you saw Fairy Baisien at the cave entrance, her face filled with reluctance as she watched you. Chapter 514, Taoist Emperor, the Unprincipled Immortal. You have returned to the dark great world. Seeing this prompt, Guan's feelings became complex. He had originally thought that Black Profound would die because of Fairy Baisien, but he had not expected that in the end, it was Fairy Baisien who saved Black Profound. Fairy Baisien did not abandon everything for love, nor did she let Black Profound bear her responsibilities. Even Guan was moved by Fairy Baisien and felt that she was worthy of the identity of an immortal sect disciple. Since there was no choice to be made, the prompt continued. Having returned to the dark great world, Black Profound chose the path of extremity, beginning to slaughter demons and slay monsters wildly. In less than a century he had fought his way back to the celestial dark demon sect. He headed straight for the vice sect hierarch, seeking to avenge his master. Everyone who tried to stop him was executed. In the end, he brought about the collapse of the celestial dark demon sect. No one dared to block his path, with the sect hierarch himself begging for mercy on behalf of the vice sect hierarch, revealing that the vice sect hierarch was his own younger brother. To this, Guan chose not to show mercy, for Black Profound needed to avenge the Luo Abyss for his master. Besides, without the pursuit of the celestial dark demon sect, how could Black Profound have been forced into the profound pure great world? Good and evil will eventually be repaid. The celestial dark demon sect had this tribulation coming. As for Black Profound, he too would face his karma. If there was cause and effect, even death would only mean his skills were inferior. Black Profound grew rapidly, but he never encountered the other two reincarnations of Guan in the dark great world, Chu Lu and Xiao Xingtian, which made him doubt whether Black Profound was indeed the Black Profound Emperor. Guan sat up from the tree trunk. He was currently in the dojo. Even if inheriting memories of reincarnation drained spiritual energy, it was like the lifespan barrier, drawing spiritual energy from all directions of great heaven and earth and would not reveal the location of the dojo. In this world today, every day, there were great cultivators breaking through. The commotion was already significant, so the disturbance caused by inheriting memories would not cause panic among all beings. Down below, Celestial Cyan and Tian Bai were still practicing swordsmanship and did not notice Guan sitting up. When the prompt regarding reincarnation reached 2,000 years later, Black Profound finally encountered a catastrophe. At 2,132 years of age, you reached the 9th heaven of the immortal path and cultivation level, alarming the whole world. The clouds of tribulation above your head had not yet dispersed when a giant hand reached out from within and grabbed you. Your consciousness fell into darkness. When you awoke, you found yourself lying on a grass field. Opening your eyes, the celestial vault was bright, majestic mountains surrounded you on all sides, and you were in a vast valley. There were other people in the valley, and you discovered that their cultivation levels were no weaker than your own, all at the 9th heaven of the immortal path and from different great worlds. Someone told you that you were inside a magical treasure and could not escape. Unconvinced, you tried and realized you indeed could not escape, forcing you to calm down. At 2,240 years of age, you tried again to break free but were once more intercepted by the world's restrictions. At 2,302 years of age, a pair of eyes appeared in the sky and you heard a voice. The voice belonged to the master of this piece of great heaven and earth, who called himself the Evil Emperor. He stated that only one among you could live to see him. You hesitated for a moment before initiating a massacre. In the end, you slaughtered 736 free immortals and began to attempt breaking into a greater realm. Your breakthrough was successful, surpassing the 9 heavens of the immortal path. You shattered the world's limits, arriving at a great hall where you met the Evil Emperor. Astounded by your talent, the Evil Emperor wanted to accept you as his disciple. Do you choose to agree to become the disciple of the Evil Emperor? Having witnessed Black Profound's rapid breakthrough to the Dao Fruit realm, and seeing the Evil Emperor remain so composed, Guan realized this individual must be terrifying. After much hesitation, Guan decided to wait. Having killed so many free immortals, Black Profound's lifespan must be immense. It was just that he hadn't had the time to keep improving. You choose to agree to become the disciple of the Evil Emperor. The Evil Emperor is gratified and presents you with a golden core to refine. You find that you can only cultivate on the hall, and it's clear that the Evil Emperor has no intention of letting you leave. You are hesitant. Do you choose to agree to refine the golden core? Guan frowned, weighing his options carefully. If the Evil Emperor had calculations and the power, why would there be a need for roundabout schemes? If the heart of the Evil Emperor was good, even if Guan refused, there shouldn't be any trouble. No. Guan made his choice. You refuse to refine the golden core. The Evil Emperor snorts coldly, saying it's not up to you. You engage in a fierce battle, ultimately falling to the Evil Emperor, who forcibly stuffs the golden core into your body and compels you to refine it, plunging you into a state of chaos. You begin to integrate the heaven-encompassing golden pill. Good gravy. The golden pill of the heaven-encompassing free immortal. What was the cultivation level of this Evil Emperor? You've comprehended the path of cause and effect. You've comprehended the path of destiny. You've comprehended the path of yin and yang. An evil soul tried to possess you, but you eradicated it by forcibly evolving your lifespan. Your cultivation level has greatly increased. You opened your eyes, and the Evil Emperor was kneeling before you, calling you master and offering you the Emperor's weapon, the Karma Rebirth Moon. You pretended to accept, leading the Evil Emperor away, and began your secluded cultivation. You successfully crossed the tribulation and reached the realm of profound Yuan free immortal. The Evil Emperor returned to congratulate you. Suddenly you attacked him. After a fierce battle, you slew the Evil Emperor and found the Emperor's destiny within the palace. You merged it with your own, changing your destiny pattern and becoming a Taoist emperor, unconstrained by karma or fate. You named yourself Black Profound Emperor, and as if decreed by some cosmic fate, you felt recognized. At the age of 2303, you stepped out of the evil domain and into the cosmos. You discovered the vastness of the universe. The dark great world was just a fraction of it, and you began to traverse the cosmos. Black Profound Emperor. It was indeed him. Seeing this prompt, Guan felt conflicted. He didn't understand why the Black Profound Emperor would want to kill his reincarnation body. The prompts kept coming. More and more slaughter, but the Black Profound Emperor didn't kill without purpose. He was also searching for a way to break free from the universe, seeking to return to the profound pure great world. When the Black Profound Emperor arrived at the world gate, he didn't encounter the celestial spirit god, leading Guan to speculate that the dark great world might not belong to the celestial spirit great world. Eventually, the Black Profound Emperor successfully crossed the universe and arrived at the path of the Great Tao. Along this path were entrances to different great worlds. The Black Profound Emperor could not discern which great world was the profound pure great world. He could only explore them one by one. The first 2 great worlds were fine. He could come and go as he pleased, but when he approached the 3rd great world, he encountered karma retribution just as he was about to enter. Even the path of destiny seemed to reject him, something he had never felt before, forcing him to retreat. This set Guan's mind racing. To encounter karma retribution, there must surely be some cause and effect involved. Could it be related to the other reincarnation bodies? In the end, the Black Profound Emperor returned to the profound pure great world, now a wasteland. He wandered between heaven and earth, seeing no living spirits, and when he came to the once thriving profound clear immortal sect, he could not find Fairy by Xian anywhere. The Black Profound Emperor lingered at the ruins of the profound clear immortal sect for a long time. He erected a monument for Fairy by Xian, and just as he was about to leave, an overwhelming oppressive force descended upon him, a presence he could never forget. The Celestial Court, the god of destruction. Reading this, Guan felt that things had gone awry. He didn't think the Black Profound Emperor was a match for the god of destruction, especially since the Black Profound Emperor was currently only a profound yuan-free immortal. At the age of 2702, you faced the god of destruction, prepared to avenge Fairy Bai Xian. Yet, to your astonishment, you saw a figure appear behind the god of destruction. It was Fairy Bai Xian. Her aura was completely different from the one in your memories, cold and detached, making you realize she was a reincarnation of a celestial court immortal god. The celestial court discovered the anomaly of this great world because of her. Now that she has regained her memories from her past life, her gaze towards you was cold and indifferent. Just when you felt utterly hopeless, the old Taoist who had taught you divine skills appeared and repelled the god of destruction with a single palm strike, then fled with you from the profound pure great world. During the escape, you learned that the anomaly the god of destruction spoke of wasn't you, an ascender, but the old Taoist himself, revealing that his Taoist name was the free immortal who exists without the celestial court's acceptance, barely surviving within the 3,000 great worlds. At the age of 2703, you were taken by the free immortal to the land of reincarnation. He urged you again to walk the path of slaughter. Thinking of Fairy Bai Xian's cold visage, this time you chose to forsake your vow. The free immortal passed on divine skills to you, allowing you to create karma avatars to slay your other reincarnation bodies and break free from the chains of reincarnation. Good heavens! So that's what was happening. This free immortal was really stirring things up. The most crucial point was that Guan had no choice in the matter. It meant that the Black Profound Emperor had not hesitated at all, greatly spurred by the shock from Fairy Bai Xian. Guan felt it was absurd, but the prompts about reincarnation continued, indicating that escaping from the lifespan reincarnation was not so easy. If a reincarnation body could kill the original, then a lifespan of 10 million years could be too much of a loss. At the age of 2820, you created 3,000 karma avatars, dispersing them into the 3,000 great worlds, then manipulating them to enter the river of destiny. A third of your karma avatars were exterminated within the year. At 3,007 years of age, the free immortal passed the cultivation technique to you, the Taoist unique venerate skill. Chapter 515. 9 Divine Mansion Terrifying Celestial God. At 3,116 years old, Guan comprehended the Taoist unique venerate skill and perceived the 3,000 great Tao, gaining enlightenment within his heart. In that same year, all the karma avatars he had sent out were annihilated. He did not inform Wu Dao Immortal of this event. At 3,320 years old, Guan found Wu Dao Immortal and expressed a desire to engage in slaughter. Wu Dao Immortal did not let him leave but instead sent him into the boundless purgatory, a place of exile used by the celestial court. Anyone who fell into it could only engage in endless slaughter until they were killed. At 3,321 years old, Guan condensed his own Taoist emperor divine skills. By the age of 3,350, Guan had leveraged lifespan evolution to forcefully enter the heaven-encompassing free immortal realm. He met Emperor Guangyu and through Emperor Guangyu he gained a deeper understanding of the boundless purgatory. At age 3,362, a powerful being was exiled into the purgatory by the celestial court. Guan witnessed this powerful being besieged, killing gods when gods stood in the way and demons when demons blocked the path. Feeling that he was no match, he stayed away from the battlefield. At 3,400 years old, Emperor Guangyu with that powerful being found Guan. This person was known as the Emperor Jianghu, also a heaven-encompassing free immortal. They prepared to go and slaughter the most terrifying existence in the boundless purgatory, the no-prison demon lord. At 3,401 years old, the three of you found the no-prison demon lord. However, you were no match for him. After being repeatedly heavily injured, Wu Dao Immortal suddenly appeared at the critical moment. Unexpectedly, he was acquainted with the no-prison demon lord. The no-prison demon lord looked at you and forced you to choose between Emperor Guangyu and Emperor Jianghu, with only one of them being able to survive with you. You fell into a dilemma. It was time for Guan to make a choice, and he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He still had a choice to make, which meant that the reincarnation body was still under the control of the lifespan reincarnation. Choosing between Emperor Guangyu and Emperor Jianghu was easy. After all, he knew Emperor Guangyu better because of Black Profound. Guan immediately chose Emperor Guangyu. You chose to let Emperor Guangyu live, yet the no-prison demon lord did not slay Emperor Jianghu but instead took him as a subordinate. You and Emperor Jianghu exchanged glances, feeling the hostility from the other. Afterwards, Wudao Immortal brought you back from the boundless purgatory to the land of reincarnation. At 3,500 years old, you took advantage of Wudao Immortal's absence and stealthily left his dojo, embarking on your own adventure in the land of reincarnation. At 3,501 years old, you encountered a ghost immortal from the 9 Divine Mansion, sustaining severe injuries and having no choice but to leap into the netherworld. You began your reincarnation. 9 Divine Mansion? A mere ghost immortal could heavily wound the Black Profound Emperor, a heaven-encompassing free immortal? Guan grew even more wary of the land of reincarnation. During his previous breakthroughs in the land of reincarnation, he had always felt an eerie chill, as though something immensely terrifying was hidden in the dark. After reincarnating, it was a new life, but the Black Profound Emperor still retained the ability of lifespan evolution. However, the reincarnation body was distinctly different from Guan. They lacked the various lifespan abilities and could only use lifespan evolution to enhance their cultivation level and Taoist techniques, not like Guan who controlled life expectancy prediction, lifespan barrier, lifespan simulation, and other abilities. Every time the Black Profound Emperor made a breakthrough, he would suffer attacks, exactly because he lacked the lifespan barrier. In this life, the Black Profound Emperor achieved the Nirvana realm before he turned 1,000 years old. Then he began to regain his memories and, after sweeping away his enemies in a single lifetime, he stepped out of the path of reincarnation at the age of 2000 and returned to the land of reincarnation, restoring his cultivation as a heaven-encompassing free immortal. Free from the harassment of the ghost immortal, the Black Profound Emperor continued to advance. In this way, the Black Profound Emperor began his own adventurous life. He no longer dwelled on Fairy by Xian, but he would go to explore the existence of the celestial court. In future hints he would meet women who moved his heart, but Guan rejected them on his behalf. One profound experience was enough. Guan continually made choices on behalf of the Black Profound Emperor, and each choice reinforced his own confidence. He had indeed been bluffed by Wudao Immortal before, as if the reincarnation body would devour its master. Before he knew it, the Black Profound Emperor reached 1 million years of age. He had been holding off breaking through to the innate golden immortal realm, and Guan felt he must be wary of something. Finally, the Black Profound Emperor began his breakthrough. At 1,008 years old, you started your breakthrough and succeeded in surpassing the free immortal status to achieve the golden immortal Dao fruit. You encountered an attack from Wudao Immortal, who wanted to take possession of your physical body. You employed your divine skills and leaped to another great world, with Wudao Immortal in hot pursuit. You have come to the celestial spirit great world. You realize this great world has already shattered, and so you rush toward the world gate, wanting to flee to a stronger great world, as the godless immortal continuously attacks you. You encounter an attack by the celestial spirit god. You are severed in two by a single axe blow from the celestial spirit god. You immediately resist, but the celestial spirit god swings the axe again and slays you, destroying both body and spirit. You die at the hands of the celestial spirit god. Reincarnation ends. Damn it. The celestial spirit god again. Even the Black Profound Emperor died by his hand? Celestial spirit god, if you could also slay the godless immortal, then I would truly admire you. That's what Guan thought to himself as he got up, disappeared from his spot, and arrived at the highest peak in the Taoist field of the beginningless. He sat cross-legged on a cliff and began to inherit the memories of reincarnation. The reincarnation prompts were just a summary. Only by truly inheriting the memories of reincarnation could one feel them vividly. A continuous stream of reincarnation memories flooded into Guan's mind. Upon awakening in the body of reincarnation in the dark great world, the whole world was enshrouded in darkness. The world was dark and human hearts even darker. Although Luo Abyss had saved Black Profound, he hadn't treated him all that well, but because he was Black Profound's only kin, Black Profound could never forget him. No matter how many years passed, Black Profound would always think of that dark cave mansion. Having become Black Profound, Guan could understand these feelings. The more one lacks something, the more they yearn. He did not miss Luo Abyss, he yearned for kinship, that was all. In the dark great world, not a single day was happy for Black Profound. Guan felt that he had it even worse than Chu Lu and Shaoxing Tian. It was only when Guan stepped into the profound pure great world that his entire world seemed to brighten and become radiant thanks to Fairy by Xian's smile. At that moment he was Black Profound and he too wanted to protect Fairy by Xian for a lifetime. The life that followed, adventuring through the great world with Fairy by Xian, was even more carefree and joyous, and also gave Guan a deeper understanding of the power of the great world. In the profound pure great world, the 9 heavens of the immortal path were not a secret to sentient beings, and there were even transcendent beings who surpassed the 9 heavens of the immortal path, active in the world, each an overlord and a great power of the world. When the god of destruction appeared, the beauty finally shattered. Guan stood in front of his cave mansion, looking up at the visage of the god of destruction, truly a sight of awe-inspiring power. Even the skies of the great thousand world could not contain the god of destruction. How powerful the profound clear immortal sect was, yet those who surpassed the 9 heavens of the immortal path fell one after another in their assaults on the god of destruction, as futile as mantises trying to stop a chariot, moths to a flame, utterly powerless. Afterward, Guan began to experience more peril. When the godless immortal brought him to the land of reincarnation and he started to cultivate his karma avatars, he caught a glimpse of the greed hidden deep in the godless immortal's eyes, which briefly exposed itself. When all 3,000 of his karma avatars were annihilated, even without the memories of that moment, he could still feel something. There was no so-called transcendence. To annihilate one's own reincarnation bodies in other spacetimes and great worlds only eliminated karma, and for each one destroyed, one would suffer from karma retribution, a pain that Guan could feel. Life is vast. Looking back, it seems like smoke and clouds. When Guan reached the endpoint of this life, he once again felt the might of the celestial spirit god, whose power was extremely terrifying, much more than what it seemed on the surface. Before his death, as his divine soul was not yet completely dissipated, Guan saw the celestial spirit god swing his axe at the godless immortal, successfully decapitating him. The godless immortal wore an expression of shock, as if he had not anticipated the celestial spirit god to be so powerful. Chapter 5:16. Taoist unique venerate skill. The reincarnation inheritance had ended. When Guan opened his eyes, the sky had darkened. He looked up to see the night sky sparkling with stars, making him feel as if a lifetime had passed. The memories from Black Profound Emperor's million-year reincarnation had completely merged into his soul. It was as if he had truly lived through those million years. Dark Great World, Profound Pure Great World, Path of the Great Tao, Land of Reincarnation. He had truly become the Black Profound Emperor, the two merging into one. The so-called reincarnation body is actually just the same soul, merely manifesting under different Tao rules. A reincarnation body can kill another reincarnation body, but it cannot kill the primordial soul. If the primordial soul perishes, all reincarnation bodies will cease to exist. It seemed that Black Profound Emperor realized this, which is why he stopped releasing karma avatars. As to whether Black Profound Emperor could differentiate if he was the primordial soul, Guan couldn't judge. But in fact, for a reincarnation body, it doesn't matter whether it is the primordial soul or not, as it does not affect the reincarnation body's ability to live. The primordial soul could even become a reliance for the reincarnation body. God of Destruction had Black Profound Emperor destroy all other reincarnation bodies just so he could escape all karmic ties and then possess a body to evade the celestial court's pursuit. Regrettably, what God of Destruction didn't understand was that Black Profound Emperor's reincarnation body operated differently from what he perceived as reincarnation. Guan's lifespan reincarnation was not bound by the Tao rules. No one could therefore infer his reincarnation body and primordial soul through Black Profound Emperor. This life, Black Profound Emperor had helped Guan understand the Great Thousand World, Path of the Great Tao and Land of Reincarnation, even revealing to him other paths of cultivation. Taoist Emperor. The Taoist Emperor is a branch in the path of cultivation, anchored in the Great Tao, obtaining the power of the Great Tao at an earlier realm, becoming an existence that realms cannot measure. To become a Taoist Emperor, one must gain the acknowledgement of the Great Tao, an exceedingly arduous task. Black Profound Emperor also became a Taoist Emperor through the inheritance left by the evil Emperor. The world established by the Great Tao is truly boundless. Even an innate golden immortal is not enough to comprehend the true essence of the Great Tao. Footsteps approached from behind, interrupting Guan's thoughts. Shenzhen came and sat in front of him, curiously asking, "What's wrong? You've been here all day and night." She had watched for a long time and approached only after seeing Guan slightly move. Guan turned his head to look at her and smiled. "Naturally, I am comprehending the natural order of the universe." Seeing the smile on his face, Shenzhen breathed a sigh of relief. She took out a painting scroll, then unfurled it. It depicted Guan's silhouette, looking so somber, radiating a morose and eerie aura of death. This is a painting I made of you earlier. During the process I saw some visions, Shinjin said cautiously. This piqued Guan's interest. Could she have seen his reincarnation memories? What did you see? Guan asked with a smile, his smile also easing Shinjin's nervousness. Previously, Guan's silhouette had brought immense pressure on Shinjin, instinctively terrifying her. If it weren't for her relationship with Guan, she really wouldn't have dared to approach. Shinjin hesitated for a moment, then said, I saw many visions, all fragments, but quite what? Quite shocking. The events and enemies you encountered are beyond what I could have ever imagined. Shinjin replied, thinking of the god of destruction's form, and couldn't help but shudder. Who wouldn't despair when faced with such an existence? She thought again about Guan's parting with Fairy Bai Xian, and when she saw Fairy Bai Xian again, that aloof and lofty demeanor made her sympathize with Guan. No wonder so many beauties threw themselves at Guan, yet he remained indifferent. It turned out he had already experienced a deeply memorable love. Listening to her thoughts, Guan guessed the scenes she had glimpsed. Although they were fragments, the fact that she could see them proved her talent for understanding the way of cause and effect. It wasn't just the way of cause and effect. Perhaps Shinjin could also glimpse into the path of reincarnation and the way of fate. Guan pretended to be serious. Those things you've seen, aside from those about me, don't talk about them, and certainly don't draw them to avoid trouble. Shinjin nodded. She wasn't foolish. How could she dare to draw the god of destruction, whom even Guan couldn't defeat? Looking at Guan's face, Shinjin felt that he was also carrying a burden, facing enemies he couldn't overcome. Perhaps Guan had come to hide in the celestial spirit great world just to avoid these formidable beings. For the first time, Shinjin felt a strong desire to become stronger. Although she was unclear about what exactly had transpired between Guan and that woman, seeing her lofty look down on Guan infuriated Shinjin. One day she would accompany Guan to take revenge. After all, she had no attachments in this life and was only following Guan to cultivate. From now on, Guan's enemies were her own. Hearing her thoughts, Guan couldn't help but laugh and cry, but he was of course somewhat touched. It was not in vain that he had brought her to the dojo. I will pass on to you a divine skill that will aid you in better understanding the Tao. Do you want to learn it? Guan looked at Shinjin with a smile. Upon hearing this, Shinjin's eyes lit up and she nodded eagerly. This skill is profound and mysterious. It won't show effects in just a year or two. Be mentally prepared, Guan cautioned. Shinjin replied, in this dojo I'm in no rush. Guan was amused, then proceeded to impart the Taoist unique venerate skill of the Black Profound Emperor to Shinjin. The Taoist unique venerate skill was originally taught by the Immortal without Tao to the Black Profound Emperor, but the Black Profound Emperor had enhanced it, making it even stronger. Guan guessed that the Black Profound Emperor had utilized lifespan evolution, which was why the Immortal without Tao, despite pursuing him, couldn't defeat him. The Taoist unique venerate skill of the Black Profound Emperor had surpassed that of the Immortal without Tao. The Taoist unique venerate skill was a complete Taoist technique, including divine skills, spells, evasion techniques and formations among others. Once Shinjin inherited the Taoist unique venerate skill, she could cease cultivating other Taoist techniques. With so many reincarnation memories merged, Guan mastered countless Taoist techniques, and the Taoist unique venerate skill was definitely one of the top tier. Perhaps the Black Profound Emperor's talent was not as great as that of Yang Xian, nor his combat ability, but his opportunities were quite extraordinary. Guan didn't pass it orally but raised his hand, his fingers pressing on Shinjin's forehead. Shinjin's eyes widened as she stared intently at Guan, a strange light flickering in her eyes. Soon she entered a state of enlightenment. The moon set and the sun rose. Morning sunlight spilled over Shinjin, who suddenly opened her eyes, staying frozen in place. Then, instinctively looking around, when she saw Guan stretching near a cliff not far away, she finally sighed in relief. The Taoist unique venerate skill was vast and boundless, and just the inheritance of cultivating memories made Shinjin feel as if she had traversed a vast sea, thus waking up with a feeling of panic as if facing a transformed world. She stood up and walked to Guan's side about to speak, but then heard Guan say, "This skill I impart to you alone, you must not pass it on." Hearing this, a smile bloomed on Shinjin's face, lifting her spirit completely. Chapter 517, 5,000 years old, the cause of transformation. This cycle of reincarnation involving the Black Profound Emperor was just a minor episode in Guan's life, a warning he gave to Shenzhen to keep secret before he returned to his usual rhythm of daily life. Gathering flowers and herbs, mentoring disciples, reading, writing, and so forth. Others in the Taoist field of the beginningless busied themselves with their own cultivation, and time passed quickly before them. In the blink of an eye, Guan celebrated his 5,000th birthday. He alone knew this fact, as everyone around him considered him an old monster who had lived untold years. That year during the summer, Guan sat on a boulder in the forest, checking his attribute panel. Name, Guan, lifespan, 5000/61 551 for 78, 029, physique, primordial infinite body, cultivation level, perfection in the innate golden immortal realm, a lifespan of over 615 billion years, not bad, steadily increasing. Guan thought thus, a smile appearing on his face. Beside him was a stream, the very place where he had first met Yi Qingshan and others, now a boundary line of the forbidden land of the Jianghu sect. He stayed here to wait for someone. While waiting, Guan looked towards the distance, observing the current state of his old acquaintances. Martial resolution had become a high-ranking member of the supreme sect, but power was corrupting his talent. Profound celestial intent was still traveling the world, having relinquished all responsibility since the supreme sect had grown stronger and leading a carefree life. Jiang had become a supreme elder, currently in seclusion and cultivating. Li Xiandao, supported by Yang Jian, began to expand the boundaries of the Taizong dynasty. The world remained a battleground between the Immortal dynasty and the Holy Court, with both sides losing numbers but their overall destiny improving as they birthed more powerful and outstanding individuals. Without the intervention of the free Immortal, all was relatively peaceful. Guan's gaze landed on Li Ya, who had been quickly increasing in cultivation under the tutelage of the Sword Annihilation ancestor, especially in his sword intent, which was fiercely potent. Having instructions surpassing even the 9 heavens of the immortal path from a sword Dao expert, Li Ya's opportunity was among the top in the world, only in how surpassing him among their generation. With the vast world filled with talents like fish in a river, the supreme sect producing 2 pinnacle geniuses gave Guan a great sense of achievement. With this feeling of accomplishment, Guan began to predict Li Ya's future. As he calculated, his expression grew peculiar. Such a possibility? Guan thought of the celestial Tao golden core and the sword annihilation ancestor, feeling that such a future was indeed reasonable. Everything had its advantages and drawbacks, and as Li Ya grew stronger he would also have to bear the karma that strength brought. After a long while, a figure approached from the depths of the woods, spotting Guan from a distance and immediately growing excited, rushing over. Was LV Xian. Once the top talent of the Taizong imperial dynasty and the son of the sect leader LV Badian. He reached Guan's side, looking at him, extremely agitated and somewhat at a loss. Guan. LV Xian was so excited he didn't know what to say. Guan looked at him, sizing him up and down, and smiled. No need to be nervous. Since you've crossed heaven and earth to get here, I naturally will fulfill my promise. Hundreds of years ago, Guan heard LV Xian calling out to him. It turned out that LV Xian had challenged Yang Jian and suffered a devastating defeat, which hit him hard. Thus he thought of seeking Guan's help, considering Yang Jian was Guan's disciple. He knelt in his own cave mansion begging Guan to teach him. After all, with a friendship spanning over 4,000 years, Guan couldn't bear to refuse him, even if only out of respect for LV Badian, so Guan allowed him to come on his own while strictly forbidding him from revealing the matter. Thus, LV Xian crossed continents and oceans, and even with the cultivation level of the Nirvana realm, it still took him hundreds of years to reach the 9-spirit continent. Along the way he faced numerous hardships and experienced both resentment and affection. Can I follow you and cultivate now? LV Xian asked, his eyes burning with eagerness. Guan smiled and raised his hand towards a nearby stream, saying, You must think carefully. Once you cross the stream there will be no turning back. Until the catastrophe of heaven and earth ends, you cannot leave my Taoist field. It's an incredibly long period, long enough to turn anyone you care about into dust. Upon hearing this, LV Xian's brows furrowed tightly. Many faces flashed through his mind, but after only a moment's hesitation, he stepped forward and crossed the stream. He turned his head to look back, gazing at the woods behind Guan as if a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. Guan stood up, crossed the stream as well and passed him by, heading toward the Taoist field of the beginningless. LV Xian hurriedly followed, but he couldn't help turning his head back again. In a daze, he saw a beautiful figure standing across the stream, her face bright with a radiant smile looking at him, causing a tremor in his pupils. Lv took a deep breath, decisively turned his head away, and quickly caught up with Guan's pace. Guan pretended not to notice his struggle and began to introduce him to the nearby mountains and forests. Lv listened intently but couldn't stop thinking about that woman. Had he truly said goodbye forever? Yet, compared to romantic attachments, he could not accept mediocrity even more. He was born to be an immortal. Guan walked slowly, and his voice gradually soothed the waves in Lv heart. When they returned to the Taoist field of the beginningless, a figure appeared out of nowhere in front of them. It was the Blood Prison Great Saint. The transformed Blood Prison Great Saint looked at Lv and sneered, "Didn't expect you to come. Let's have a match." He had long wanted to fight Lv. Lv clearly remembered the Blood Prison Great Saint and immediately agreed to the challenge without hesitation, thus completely pushing his worries aside. Guan raised his hand to create a barrier, allowing the two to enter and fight to their heart's content. Once they entered, they immediately unleashed their auras, which also alerted the others in the dojo since they were unfamiliar with Lv aura and couldn't help but overthink. One figure after another appeared beside Guan, inquiring about Lv identity. Guan briefly introduced him, and when they heard that Guan had personally brought Lv in, they dismissed their concerns and began to look forward to his performance. Chen Chuan felt Lv aura and secretly marveled. As they were both in the Nirvana realm, he felt he was probably no match for Lv. Celestial Demon Child, Celestial Cyan, Tian Bai, and Ghost Mother of Ephemera also felt a sense of awe. Jianghu and Xingtian watched the fight earnestly, hoping to learn. Shenzhen came up to Guan and whispered, "His karma and destiny are changing rapidly." Guan glanced at her but did not respond. Indeed, there were changes. The changes were due to Guan cleansing Lv karma to prevent powerful beings from using him to predict the presence of the Taoist field of the beginningless. Better safe than sorry, even though Guan was already an innate golden immortal, he still acted cautiously. Guan looked at Lv, his eyes revealing a hint of expectation. Meanwhile, far across the realms, Leah arrived in front of the 9 Extremes Sacred Heart Sword. The area was an open forest, and the Sword Annihilation Ancestor stood nearby, watching Leah. In front of Leah, the 9 Extremes Sacred Heart Sword was stuck in the soil, its blade etched with crimson flame patterns and about 4 fingers wide. The hilt was dark purple, resembling the scale armor of some exotic beast wrapped around it, and the guard was engraved with a lifelike eerie eye. As Leah looked at the 9 Extremes Sacred Heart Sword, he tried to calm his emotions, while the divine exotic immortal spirit leaped out of his body and perched on his shoulder, eyeing the 9 Extremes Sacred Heart Sword. Chapter 518, Famous throughout the world, Silent Extinction Aura. To have the 9 Extremes Sacred Heart Sword submit to you, you must first be fearless. The greater your fear, the stronger its backlash will be, and then you will endure pain unimaginable to ordinary people. No matter how painful, you must not be afraid. If you are not confident that you can do this, it is still not too late to give up now. The voice of the Sword Annihilation Ancestor came from his side, and Li Ya's expression flickered upon hearing this. The divine exotic immortal spirit turned its head to look at the Sword Annihilation Ancestor and asked, "What happens if one fails?" The Sword Annihilation Ancestor responded, "At best, 2/3 of your 3 souls and 7 spirits will be damaged, but at worst, your soul will scatter, leaving only an empty shell to be possessed by the Sword Soul." These words caused the divine exotic immortal spirit to shudder. Its gaze toward the 9 Extremes Sacred Heart Sword was filled with dread. It whispered, "You're not burdened by a deep-seated vendetta, nor do you have anything urgent that you must do right away. Why risk this?" Upon hearing this, Li Ya's eyes became resolute. He took a deep breath and said, "It's precisely because there is no necessity that I must push myself. I don't want to live a mediocre life." With that said, he grasped the hilt of the 9 Extremes Sacred Heart Sword. Boom! A violent evil aura burst from inside the 9 Extremes Sacred Heart Sword, soaring into the sky and attempting to scatter the clouds above. The surrounding woods shook violently as if they were about to be uprooted. The Sword Annihilation Ancestor raised his hand, pressed forward, and tranquility returned to heaven and earth. The nearby trees no longer trembled, and a ring of chi force appeared around Li Ya. Li Ya's face was strained with popping veins, and his eyes wide, his gaze started to be veiled in bloodshot red, gradually losing their luster. "Young one, why do you wield the sword? What is the killing intent in your heart? Whom do you wish to kill?" Why are you discontent? Who do you resent? It seems you're fearing something. A gloomy voice kept echoing in Li Ya's ears, making the world in his eyes spin. He suddenly found himself on a desolate plain under a blood-red sky. He saw a figure in the distance on a hillside, only its silhouette visible, not its face. Just as Li Ya was about to speak, suddenly, a whooshing sound came. A sword thrust through Li Ya's throat, making his body lean back, his eyes widening. In his pupils was reflected the face of Guan, with disheveled hair and fierce eyes like a fierce ghost, pierced through his throat. Far away in the Taoist field of the beginningless, Guan was feeling the illusion that Li Ya was experiencing. The sword annihilation ancestor was being crafty, actually trying to deduce the karma between Li Ya and him through the 9 extremes sacred heart sword. It seemed that the sword annihilation ancestor had other motives for coming to the celestial spirit great world. Guan was not too worried. The difference in their cultivation levels was vast. The sword annihilation ancestor couldn't reach him. He felt the sword intent from the sword annihilation ancestor entering Li Ya's body, helping him withstand the backlash of the 9 extremes sacred heart sword, which reassured him. Perhaps the sword annihilation ancestor had plans for the supporting Tao sword venerable, but at least he wouldn't let Li Ya die right now. Li Ya was only at the Nirvana realm and couldn't bear the power of the 9 extremes sacred heart sword on his own. The fact that the sword annihilation ancestor intervened showed that he truly wanted Li Ya to inherit this power, regardless of later schemes, and Guan would act again if needed. Guan then turned his attention to the battle between the Blood Prison Great Saint and LV, feeling expectant. He personally trained LV, who must become stronger as, after many years in the primordial era, LV was the strongest in heaven and earth. A smile involuntarily appeared on Guan's face as he thought of the delightful outcome. Meanwhile, LV was feeling immense pressure, shocked by the strength of the Blood Prison Great Saint, yet he was also thrilled. To think a fierce bull could be so powerful, his training with Guan would surely make him stronger. The celestial demon child, and Xan, Qin Chuan, and others were also discussing the battle, equally astounded by LV's displayed strength since the Blood Prison Great Saint was a loose immortal, and for a Nirvana realm cultivator to fight a loose immortal to such an extent spoke volumes of his talent. At dusk, Supreme Sect, 3rd Medicine Valley. Long Qing came down from the pavilion. He saw Candle Star standing on a roof, gazing steadily into the distance. He immediately flashed to Candle Star's side and asked, "What are you looking at?" Candle Star replied, "The 9 extremes sacred heart sword. The sword is recognizing its master, and it's recognizing a cultivator from the Nirvana realm." Nirvana realm cultivator? Long Qing couldn't help but frown, finding it absurd. Candle Star continued, "Speaking of which, this person has some connections with you. To be precise, he is connected through the cause and effect of the supporting Tao sword venerable, and his name is Li Ya." Elderly? Long Qing's tightly furrowed brows relaxed. "If it's him, it's not surprising. Perhaps my master is protecting him." Long Qing had grown up following Guan and knew well the relationship between Guan and Li Ya. Candle Star looked at Long Qing and asked with a smile, "Do you think your master has really left the celestial spirit great world?" Although Long Qing had already reached an agreement with Candle Star, he still retained a bit of wariness towards him, given the vast difference in their cultivation levels. Long Qing shook his head. "How would I know? After all, I didn't follow him." Candle Star smiled, deciding not to ask any further. "How powerful will Elderly become after mastering the 9 extremes sacred heart sword?" Long Qing asked curiously. The 9 extremes sacred heart sword had caused such a stir in the past, and he had longed for it too. Candle Star answered, "With this sword in hand, even the 9 heavens of the immortal path cannot kill him. However, the extent of the power he can wield reaches only as high as the heaven and earth flying immortal realm." Long Qing fell silent, his eyes filled with envy and astonishment. This was akin to soaring to the skies. It seemed Elderly was going to become famous throughout the world. As the years flew like an arrow, another millennium passed. Inside the Taoist field of the beginningless, Guan lay on a tree reading a book, while below on the grassland figures like an Xen celestial demon child, celestial Cyan Tian by LV Blood Prison Great Saint, and Jianghu were meditating, all immersed in the Tao intent imparted by Guan. Sunlight sprinkled down, seeping through the gaps in the leaves and falling upon Guan. He slowly raised his head and looked towards the celestial vault. Ever since he had arrived at the Taoist field of the beginningless, time had passed much faster than before, but he did not feel uncomfortable. Instead he enjoyed it as his lifespan also increased rapidly. The celestial spirit great world, which had known peace for over 2,000 years, was going to face turmoil again. The will of heavenly Tao always remembered to destroy all living beings. This time, it was other great worlds within the universe that were invading, preparing to take over the celestial spirit great world, with Tao fruit realm beings scheming in the background. Guan had no intention of intervening. Nowadays, the celestial spirit great world was a place where many powerful beings were interconnected with bound interests, and many strong beings would not allow the celestial spirit great world to be destroyed at this critical juncture. He was more of a spectator. Elder brother Li, although you have already become famous throughout the world, this calamity might cause you to stumble again, Guan murmured to himself, a smile appearing on his face. 500 years ago, Liya had emerged abruptly, wielding the 9 Extremes Sacred Heart Sword and challenging sword cultivators across the world. Victorious in every battle, his fame was unparalleled for a time, and people had forgotten about and how, considering Liya the greatest talent in the world, even though he relied on the 9 Extremes Sacred Heart Sword. Suddenly, Guan's expression changed slightly as he looked towards outer heaven. This aura, are you still not giving up? Guan thought to himself, his gaze sharp. He felt the aura of the Silent Destruction God Emperor, coming from the World Gate. The Silent Destruction God Emperor had possessed the Long clan's flesh, and in order to capture Long Qin, he even planned to harm all living beings. Such actions had already put him on Guan's kill list. Chapter 519, The Great Tao Tree, Divine Emperor's Pawn in the Depths of the Universe. A world gate stood tall. Here it seemed as if there were no hours, the years could not taint this grand, towering gate. At this moment, a bright light shone from within the world gate. A figure slowly stepped out from the strong light, clad in black armor, a mysterious presence, a helmet underneath which was as black as a black hole, making it impossible for anyone to see his true face. It was the Silent Destruction God Emperor. In his right hand, palm facing up, hovered a golden token, long as a knife, intricately carved on its surface, emanating a brilliant golden radiance, dazzling beyond compare. As he walked out of the world gate he stopped, turned his head to look at the figure of the celestial spirit god. Another 7 figures stepped out one after another from the world gate, men and women alike, each with a celestial demeanor and magnificent bearing, their gazes also turning toward the celestial spirit god. Whatever you all intend to do, you must not destroy this great thousand world, otherwise even your celestial orders won't be able to save you. The voice of the celestial spirit god rang out, indifferent in tone, with an unyielding firmness that allowed no rebuttal. Before the Silent Destruction God Emperor could speak, a man in a white robe behind him raised his hand in greeting and smiled. Celestial God, rest assured, we have only come to capture one person and will not disrupt the rules of the great thousand world. The celestial spirit god did not respond, and the Silent Destruction God Emperor proceeded to step toward the depths of the universe, followed closely by the man in the white robe and others. Soon this expanse of void fell into silence once more, the bright light inside the world gate dissipated, and the surroundings of the world gate dimmed, with only the light emanating from the celestial spirit god persisting. Although the arrival of the Silent Destruction God Emperor drew Guan's attention, he did not initiate an attack because he felt that the Silent Destruction God Emperor also possessed an innate golden immortal's cultivation level. Battling an opponent of the same realm wasn't wise. Guan, lying on a tree branch, sat up. Forget it, let's have a lifespan simulation. Requires 5 billion years of lifespan, continue? 5 billion years of lifespan? That's way too expensive. Guan directly chose no, there was no need to waste lifespan, especially since the aura of the Silent Destruction God Emperor didn't intimidate him. The Silent Destruction God Emperor wouldn't be able to discover the Taoist field of the beginningless unless he intended to destroy the celestial spirit great world. Although many have seen Guan in this world, Guan has already tampered with their cause and effect. No one would be able to trace back to the Taoist field of the beginningless. Guan lay back down, continuing to read his book. He would cross that bridge when he came to it. It must be said, in these years the profound celestial intense penmanship had improved greatly. The depiction of emotion in the text was especially delicate, tugging at one's heartstrings. Guan read intently. Through the words he could visualize the scenes of the past, the characters' emotions as fervent as fire. The sun set and the moon rose, a full 5 days passed, and Xian and others finally woke up one after another, which was because Guan had withdrawn his Tao intent. Seeing Guan sleeping on the tree, they all stood up and paid their respects before leaving in small groups, whispering their insights to each other. After they all left, only then did Guan open his eyes. His gaze turned toward the celestial vault. The silent destruction god emperor had arrived at the celestial spirit great world with his 7 subordinates. They did not go to the supreme sect but joined the holy court instead. Could it be that their target was not to eliminate Longqing? Longqing's identity had already been exposed. Even that candle star knew clearly, the silent destruction god emperor must also be aware. Perhaps the silent destruction god emperor wanted to possess Longqing's body. After watching for a while and confirming that the silent destruction god emperor had no immediate intention to act, Guan flipped off the tree, ready to gather medicinal herbs. No matter what sinister plots and schemes the silent destruction god emperor had, his progression in strength could not stop. Once he reached a lifespan of 100 billion years, Guan could peer into higher realms. Getting stronger was always the right move. At the same time, in the sacred domain, within the Grand Council Hall of the Holy Court, the Saint Minister sat at the head, looking down upon the silent destruction god emperor and his 7 subordinates. The Saint Minister remembered the battle fought between the silent destruction god emperor and the supporting Tao sword venerable. Although the god emperor was annihilated by a single move from the sword venerable, the aura he exuded at the time was still vivid in his memory. "Why have you come?" the Saint Minister asked. He didn't know why the silent destruction god emperor was still alive, but with the supporting Tao sword venerable having left the celestial spirit great world, he had to be cautious in facing these outsiders from beyond. Looking at the silent destruction god emperor and the others, the Saint Minister felt bitter. He had tirelessly reached the state of a free immortal, but the opponents he faced were numerous and even stronger. It seemed as though the heavens were toying with him. A man in white robes stepped forward from behind the silent destruction god emperor and said with a smile, "Now the immortal dynasty has an existence that surpasses the free immortal. Once he merges with the immortal god destiny pattern, the end of the holy court won't be far off." With those words, the Saint Minister's expression turned ugly. He had always been troubled by this matter but was powerless to address it. How could he feel good having it pointed out by others? It was clear, these people wanted to use the holy court. The key issue was that the holy court was indeed on the path to doom. There seemed to be no imminent peril, but it was really just a matter of time. Since he couldn't refuse these people's manipulations, the Saint Minister struggled to keep his composure. The man in white continued to speak with a smile. "Even if the young immortal emperor merges with the immortal god destiny pattern, he would not be a match for us. We can assist the holy court. You needn't worry about the court becoming our puppet, for we shall leave sooner or later. We are in this world only to cultivate one person." The Saint Minister inquired, "May I ask who this person is? Is he within my holy court?" The man in white shook his head. "No, we only need the holy court to create obstacles for him, better tempering him and allowing him to grow stronger." After hearing this, the Saint Minister fell into silence. "We will not help you directly annihilate the young immortal emperor. You probably already realize the existence of the tribulations of heaven and earth and the will of the heavenly Tao. If the young immortal emperor acts against the holy court, naturally we will intervene. Before that, we will stay in the holy court," the man in white said. These words did stir the Saint Minister's heart. He could sense that this group was very strong, each one giving him the same feeling he got from facing the supporting Tao sword venerable. The most crucial point was that he had no room to refuse. To do so would only make things uglier, perhaps disastrously so. As the Saint Minister sighed inwardly, the silent destruction god emperor raised his hand and from his palm flew a wooden rod. It was a red wooden rod with a curved top like a serpent. Apart from being brightly colored, it looked unremarkable. The silent destruction god emperor spoke, "This rod is made of Tao wood and can grant you unparalleled strength, as well as assist you in comprehending the great Tao. Consider it a gift for our first meeting." The Saint Minister started to speak, but the red rod suddenly flew in front of him. The immense pressure changed his complexion. He sensed the profound Tao intent within the rod, and his eyes widened in shock. Such a treasure. The Saint Minister looked at the silent destruction god emperor and asked, Who exactly are you?" The face of the silent destruction god emperor was shrouded in darkness, as if he were the most mysterious being in the world, and he responded, "The silent extinction domain was my creation, and silent extinction is my name." The Saint Minister opened his mouth, his face etched with disbelief. In a valley, the immortal seeker sat beside a lake, gazing at the bright day sky, murmuring, "It seems that I still can't let go." "Whose chess piece are you?" Zhu Shi, who sat meditating in the middle of the lake, opened her eyes and glanced at him, asking, "Whom are you talking about?" "The one who created the Qi of annihilation." "The Divine Emperor? Someone of his caliber is also a chess piece?" "Indeed, he's been tirelessly working for the bloodline of the Long clan. He's either being driven by someone behind the scenes or pressured by an even greater force. The waters of this world are becoming muddier, and when the heaven and earth Tao fruit appears, your pressure will only increase." With that said, the immortal seeker's face took on a teasing expression. Zhu Shi hummed, "The Taoist unique venerate skill you passed on to me is so powerful, and with my talent I'm not afraid." Chapter 520, Inheritance. The Thousand-Year Battle. The Taoist unique venerate skill is indeed formidable. If one can grasp its essence, dominating a corner of the great thousand world would not be an issue. However, this skill is not so easy to cultivate. The immortal seeker said nonchalantly as his thoughts lingered on the distant holy court. He knew very well how powerful the silent destruction god emperor was, and for that reason he felt the situation in the world was spiraling out of control. He was only a reincarnated being. He could not intervene in the workings of the heavenly Tao. His role was to assist others. But no matter how great the opportunity he provided Zhu Shi, for her to possess the strength to contend with the silent destruction god emperor before the change of the era was utterly impossible. After Zhu Shi mentioned the Taoist unique venerate skill, her confusion resurfaced. She asked, "What exactly is the origin of the Taoist unique venerate skill? In the process of cultivating it, I saw many figures. If they all practice this skill, do they belong to the same sect?" The immortal seeker looked at her and smiled. "Not just anyone can cultivate the Taoist unique venerate skill. This skill is passed down in a single lineage, and I too have only received its technique, never having cultivated it myself." Zhu Shi pondered this after hearing his words. The immortal seeker stood up and said, "Continue with your cultivation. I'll step out for a bit." Zhu Shi did not inquire further but closed her eyes and continued to perceive the Taoist unique venerate skill. Even though she had regained her memories of Xingtian, her interest in the Taoist unique venerate skill remained. With her talent, comprehending the Taoist unique venerate skill still proved to be a struggle, which was enough to indicate the unfathomable depth of this skill. The arrival of the silent destruction god emperor and others did not change the overall situation of the world. Against the backdrop of strife between the Holy Court and Immortal Dynasty, prodigies rose, and great cultivators who had been in seclusion for long periods broke through their limits, reaching higher realms, shaking heaven and earth. The number of living beings between heaven and earth dwindled, with cultivators moving toward the central region of the celestial spirit great world and mortal spirits fleeing to the edges. The number of mortals on the nine-spirit continent was increasing, leading to sects springing up like bamboo shoots after a rainstorm, and even demons began staking out their territories. The Taoist field of the beginningless, situated near the Qingkuan sect, fortunately faced no trouble. On this day, Yi Qingshan and 4 others came into the forest to meet an XN. All 5 had successively reached the nirvana realm in cultivation, but they still acted with restraint in front of an XN. They could never ascertain Nzin's cultivation level, so they believed her realm to be far above theirs. "A sect's main technique inheritance is missing?" an XN asked, frowning. Yi Qingshan's face showed a bit of awkwardness. He cleared his throat, braced himself and said, "Indeed, figures from the sea sects have appeared on the fringes of the mainland. They have deeper resources and are constantly recruiting mainland cultivators. Numerous families and prodigies in our Qingkuan sect have been poached. Ultimately, the Qingkuan sect lacks exceptional advantages." He felt there was no reason to come to an XN, but recalling the thousands of years they had known each other and the familiarity that had grown, coupled with the urging from the higher-ups in the sect, they had no choice but to approach her. The Qingkuan sect was no longer just their sect but belonged to 1,000,000 disciples. For the future of the sect, what was the harm in losing face? After all, Yi Qingshan was prepared for the awkwardness of being rejected. Qing Ming followed up, "Senior, we dare not demand that you bestow upon us such an inheritance, but even just pointing us in the right direction would be appreciated." The other 3 echoed in agreement. The 5 of them had ventured out for 1,000 years, but within the entirety of heaven and earth, they were still at the bottom. Their cultivation techniques, spells, and divine skills were quite mediocre within the immortal Tao realm. An XN quietly watched them, making them so ashamed that they wished they could shrink into the ground. Suddenly, Anexan pursed her lips in a smile and said, "I do indeed have an inheritance that suits you." At these words, the 5 of them looked up at her with surprise. Anexan raised her right hand and with a flick of her finger, 5 secret manuals appeared in her hand. The covers of these 5 secret manuals bore no titles, and within Zin's actions, Yi Qingshan and his 4 companions exchanged perplexed looks. The techniques and divine skills of the immortal Tao realm were vast and boundless, definitely not something that could be contained within just 5 books. They dared not offend Anexan, however, and could only grumble in their hearts. "Choose one," Anexan said with a smile, feeling secretly thrilled. Was this what it felt like to pass on one's teachings? Before coming here today, her master had handed her the 5 secret manuals. She had been puzzled at first, but after Yi Qingshan and his companions spoke up, she came to admire her master's foresight. This, Yi Qingshan frowned, could a legacy be passed down in such a frivolous manner? Anexan raised an eyebrow, and Yi Qingshan immediately stepped forward to draw a manual from her hands. Seeing this, Anexan put the other 4 manuals into her sleeve and turned to leave, leaving behind a final remark. "This cultivation technique will now be the main technique of your Jianghu sect. I hope you will use it for good." Hearing this, Yi Qingshan and the others hastily paid their respects and watched her figure disappear into the depths of the forest before they gathered to examine the manual. Yi Qingshan opened the first page and read aloud, "Heaven and Earth Primordial Skill, Jianghu. It does suit our sect's name, but..." Gu Changxing hesitated. He wanted to say Anexan was playing a trick on them, but feared being overheard by her. Yi Qingshan turned to the second page and instantly, a burst of golden light emanated from within, enveloping the 5 cultivators. Their expressions changed dramatically, and their gazes became distant and unfocused. By the lakeside, Guan was sparring with Chen Chuan in swordsmanship. Having reached the immortal Tao realm, the actual moves were no longer important, but Guan used them to guide Chen Chuan towards Sword Tao enlightenment. Chen Chuan had an extremely high comprehension of Sword Tao. Each year he could feel himself growing stronger, but whenever he sparred with his master, he felt his own Sword Tao was childlike and posed no threat to his master. Guan held the Cyan Hong sword with the blade sheathed, countering Chen Chuan's sword techniques with just the scabbard, and leading him into other moves. At a glance, Chen Chuan seemed like a puppet effortlessly manipulated by him. LV Xian sat under a tree not far away, intently watching, seeking to understand Guan's Sword Tao. Though he did not specialize in Sword Tao, having seen the 3,000 Great Tao, he believed he could gain insight by analogy. After a while, Guan pressed the scabbard to Chen Chuan's forehead, immobilizing him, signaling the end of their sparring session. Chen Chuan let out a sigh of relief, a smile spreading across his face. "Master, I understand now." Guan sheathed his sword and then beckoned to LV Xian, who immediately ran over. "What do you think about holding a contest in our dojo every 1,000 years, where except for me all of you participate?" Guan asked with a smile. Hearing this, both LV Xian and Chen Chuan's eyes lit up. They both harbored competitive spirits and were naturally eager to prove themselves before their master. The two agreed without hesitation, even somewhat impatient to start. Guan had suggested this because everyone in the dojo had already reached the Nirvana realm, and there were no particularly weak practitioners. Moreover, each one had received his personal teachings, and the Taoist techniques and divine skills they possessed were distinct. Of course, besides applying pressure to his disciples, he also wanted to liven things up. "It won't be a contest of who's strongest. Each time I will personally select your opponents. You only have to fight one battle, and after 10,000 years, you all will inevitably have faced each other," Guan said, still smiling. LV Xian and Chen Chuan naturally had no objections and were already looking forward to it. "He'll tell you in advance you two will be each other's first opponents," Guan said with a chuckle. Upon hearing this, LV Xian and Chen Chuan instinctively looked at each other, then after their initial shock, a fighting spirit and confidence ignited in their eyes, each believing they could win. Chapter 521. The Shock of Candle Star. The arrangement for the once-in-millennium combat spread quickly throughout the Taoist field of the beginningless, invigorating everyone. Staying within the dojo, they spent most of their time in cultivation, which inevitably could become monotonous, so having something to look forward to was naturally good. Plus, they wanted to test the results of their cultivation. Unlike casual sparring, a combat hosted by Guan was sure to be taken seriously. Even an Xian wanted to see how strong she could be when she went all out. At dusk, the forest swayed gently with the wind, quiet and exquisitely beautiful. Can I participate too? The ghost mother of Ephemera, dressed in black, stood beside Guan and asked excitedly. Guan was admiring a newly matured spirit flower. He replied, "Would I really be playing a trick on you?" The ghost mother of Ephemera's heart raced. She understood what participating in the combat meant. It meant that Guan had accepted her. As she excitedly moved to kneel, an invisible force stopped her. I've said before, within the Taoist field of the beginningless, there is no need for such formalities, Guan said, his face showing satisfaction. The quality of this spirit flower was good. It could be transplanted to his study. The ghost mother of Ephemera nodded, her heart pounding fast. After the joy, she felt pressure. The people at the dojo were not simple. Guan didn't pay attention to what she was thinking. Taking the spirit flower, he left, while the ghost mother of Ephemera still respectfully bowed to his retreating figure. This is an opportunity one cannot miss. Her eyes sparkling, she felt a surge of power throughout her body. In the Taoist field of the beginningless, there was no lack of heavenly materials and earthly treasures, and with a great power like Guan as a mentor, the so-called loss of freedom, she thought, was not permanent. As long as she performed well, there would come a day when Guan would need her, send her on missions, and then she could return to the delights of the human world. In the blink of an eye, another 100 years passed. The autumn wind blew into the third medicine valley of the supreme sect where LV Badian, with his white hair, stood in front of a medicine garden. Looking at the medicinal herbs, he seemed to see a blurred figure. It was as if a scene from long ago overlapped before his eyes. Long Qing came to his side and asked, "Sect leader, what are you thinking about? You're not reminiscing about my master again, are you?" "Don't worry, he's definitely fine." LV Badian came to his senses and looked at Long Qing, his face involuntarily forming a smile. He felt that Long Qing was very much like Guan, not just in stature but also in appearance. Guan had many disciples, but only Long Qing resembled him. He couldn't help but suspect that Long Qing might actually be a child Guan had left in the outside world. Perhaps there was a story behind it, and that's why Guan had not made clear his relationship with Long Qing. Because of such a suspicion, LV Badian felt close to Long Qing and had already started to consider him the successor as sect leader. With the connection of being a disciple of the supporting Tao Sword Venerable, it would certainly not be difficult for Long Qing to take the position in the future. The heaven-splitting axe was still on the heaven-repairing platform. As long as the sword intent of the supporting Tao Sword Venerable remained, the supreme sect couldn't forget or overlook the Sword Venerable. "Are you ready to be the sect leader?" LV Badian asked with a smile. Upon hearing this, Long Qing showed a confident smile and said, "Of course I'm ready. With Senior Candle Star supporting me, I believe I can handle any trouble that comes my way." Hearing him mention Candle Star, LV Badian didn't pay too much attention. Strong as Candle Star might be, could he be as strong as Guan? He was the sect leader who often leveraged the power of the supporting Tao Sword Venerable. LV Badian began to instruct him on what to pay attention to as sect leader. Long Qing listened earnestly. Many said that LV Badian wasn't formidable enough and that he only held his position because of the supporting Tao Sword Venerable. But in Long Qing's eyes, that was precisely what made LV Badian remarkable. Pulling in a powerhouse with no blood or mentor-disciple ties as a stable supporter over the years, wasn't that impressive? Being a sect leader wasn't just about who had the highest cultivation level, but about such maneuvers. That's why Long Qing greatly respected LV Badian and also wanted to learn from him. While chatting, LV Badian started to talk about the past, how he once disguised himself as a medicine slave to serve as Guan's assistant, when neither knew the other's identity, and that's how they formed a bond. Each time he talked about these past events, a smile would slip onto LV Badian's face. Unable to help himself, Long Qing spoke up. The words he said, "Maybe he was guiding you on how to be a better sect leader. After all, how could he not know your identity?" LV Badian paused momentarily and then chuckled, shaking his head. "Indeed. But he could have chosen someone else, yet he chose me who had made mistakes. His broad-mindedness is unimaginable. When I think about it, as long as one doesn't commit heinous crimes, he always provides an opportunity for redemption. This is also my principle for being a sect leader. Is this person beyond redemption? Must this person be expelled from the sect? I'll make a decision once I've thought it through." Long Qing found this reasonable and silently noted down these words. They hadn't noticed that a figure was approaching the entrance of the third medicine valley. Ever since the supporting Tao sword venerable left, the Supreme Sect had not sent disciples to guard the Medicine Valley. It used to be out of fear of disturbing the supporting Tao sword venerable, not to protect the valley's safety. Thousands of years had passed, and while disciples still remembered the legend of the supporting Tao sword venerable, the vast majority knew nothing of his connection with the Third Medicine Valley. Now that disciples entered and exited the Third Medicine Valley, no one would stop them. The man in white who entered the Third Medicine Valley had a black cloth tied around his waist with a treasure sword at his side. His long hair was casually tied behind his head, with strands on either side of his face fluttering like willow catkins, reaching down to his chest. He was very handsome, and the female disciples he passed couldn't help but take extra glances. His expression indifferent, he observed his surroundings while walking deeper into the valley. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of him. It was Candlestar from the battle court. Candlestar sized up the man in white and squinted, asking, "Who might you be?" Candlestar was secretly shocked. He was the profound Yuan-free immortal, yet he couldn't discern this man's cultivation level. The man in white looked at Candlestar and asked in return, "Are you Candlestar from the battle court?" Upon hearing this, Candlestar's brows furrowed deeply, surprised that the stranger recognized him. "Just who are you? I'm not here for you, nor will I interfere with your plans." The man in white interrupted Candlestar, his words cold. He then moved past Candlestar and continued on his way. His gaze quickly settled on Longqing. Candlestar stepped in front of him again, his voice cold. "Then who are you looking for? How can I be sure you won't mess with my plans if you don't explain yourself clearly?" The man in white answered, "I'm looking for Longqing, your disciple. I won't harm him. I'm just here to give him a warning, and what I have to say has nothing to do with your schemes." Having said that, he moved forward again, this time shouldering past Candlestar. This shove made Candlestar even more wary of him. This man was very strong. Candlestar watched as the man in white headed toward Longqing, hesitated for a moment and decided to follow. Clang! The sound of a sword being drawn suddenly echoed, and the tip of the blade was abruptly at Candlestar's throat, causing his pupils to dilate. So fast. He hadn't even seen how the man in white had drawn his sword, and this sword was no ordinary sword. Chapter 522, Celestial Dragon Dharma Aspect. Breaking destiny. Feeling the sharpness at his throat, Candlestar asked in a deep voice, "If you don't explain your origins, I can't possibly let you get close to him." The man in white glanced at Candlestar, his sword-raising hand perfectly straight, like a bridge, making Candlestar feel he was hard to reach. Although wary of the man in white, Candlestar was not yet at the point of fear. For the sake of entering the World Gate, how much effort had he exerted to obtain such an opportunity? How could he give up now? "My identity cannot be revealed, otherwise it will harm both him and you. You just need to know that the sword in my hand can diminish your Tao fruit," the man in white said with an indifferent look in his eyes. As his words fell, a terrifying sword intent instantly locked onto Candlestar, causing the gaze of profound Yuan-free immortal to lose its luster. The man in white turned and sheathed his sword, continuing to walk towards Longqing. Candlestar stood dumbfounded in place, his body trembling slightly. The clash between the two was not hidden. Many disciples saw the man in white draw his sword against Candlestar, yet they did not act rashly, for they all knew that Candlestar was the strongest existence in Medicine Valley. Even the Valley Master held great respect for him. The Third Medicine Valley of today did not possess the cohesion of 1,000 years ago. Most disciples were merely passing through, at least they would not risk their lives for Longqing. Noticing the approach of the man in white while chatting with LV Baitin, Longqing's gaze fell upon Candlestar. He saw Candlestar rooted to the spot, body trembling, gaze vacant, clearly not in a proper state. Just as he was about to speak up, the man in white suddenly arrived in front of him, startling Longqing into a reflexive step back. Snap! The scabbard pressed on Longqing's shoulder, rendering him immobile. Longqing's eyes widened, a look of disbelief crossing his face. LV Baitin beside him also reacted, instinctively wanting to make a move against the man in white, but was subdued by a single glance from the man. Faced with the man in white's gaze, LV Baitin felt as if had entered another dimly lit world, surrounded by dense treasure swords pointing towards him, sending shivers down his spine. He felt as if moving even an inch would result in colliding with a sword, creating a suffocating and terrifying sensation of being unable to move at all. In reality, Longqing did not fall into an illusion realm, but facing the man in white, he felt no less pressure. The scabbard on his shoulder felt like a majestic mountain, such that he couldn't muster his mana. Long Qing stared at the man in white and asked in a deep voice, "Who are you and do we have a grudge?" Long Jun looked at him with a deep and distant gaze, "Because my current fate is worse than death. What you see is not me from this moment but from the past. This is a method I left before being captured, hoping to help the Long clan escape its destiny." Long Qing couldn't comprehend his words and involuntarily glanced at Candle Star. Candle Star furrowed his brows and asked, "Do you mean that you have traveled here from the past or projected yourself here?" Long Jun said, "If it's too hard to understand, don't dwell on it. What's most important is how to resolve the impending calamity. If the silent destruction god emperor succeeds in possessing you, he might indeed gain the powers of my grandfather." "Are you talking about Long Zhan?" "Yes, although I inherited his destiny pattern in comparison to his bloodline power, it's really nothing," Long Jun answered. Long Qing recalled Candle Star mentioning before that Emperor Longxin's grandson had also inherited the talents of Celestial Dragon Emperor Long Zhan. He opened his mouth intending to ask, "Isn't Emperor Longxin's grandson Long Jun's son?" As if seeing through his confusion, Long Jun replied, "Yes, my child also inherited this bloodline power. It was precisely because of it that the Long clan met with disaster. He is already dead and I am still alive only because my father told me the stories of my grandfather. Since childhood I have hidden my talents, but my child was born during the prime of the war court and he was reckless." Long Qing felt dizzy from the information, and Candle Star was equally shocked, rapidly contemplating. Long Jun looked at Long Qing and said, "To break the Long clan's fate, you need to practice a divine skill." Long Qing frowned and asked, "Which divine skill?" "The Celestial Dragon Dharma aspect. This skill will allow you to conjure the Dharma aspect of people with whom you share a blood connection to fight alongside you." "Even if I master it, won't their strength depend on my cultivation level?" asked Long Qing, frowning. He instinctively resisted, feeling the divine skill came at great cost. "No, the strength of the conjured Dharma aspects will be solely based on their own cultivation levels when they were alive. The difficult part is to conjure them. This is a skill created by my father, reportedly inspired by my grandfather. He said my grandfather's skill was even more powerful, but unfortunately I have never witnessed it," Long Jun explained. "What's the price to learn this skill?" asked Long Qing, taking a deep breath. Long Jun replied, "It will cost you a lifetime. You may bear offspring before exercising this power and then sacrifice yourself to break the Long clan's fate. That's the only way." "Only way?" Long Qing's brow furrowed and for some reason, his thoughts turned to his master. Did his master leave because of his fate? But if that were the case, why would senior sister Anshin ask on behalf of his master if he was willing to follow? Long Qing looked up at Long Jun and asked, "Then do you know my master?" Chapter 523, The Strength of the Long Clan Your Master? Long Jun frowned, his tone revealing confusion as his gaze shifted to Candle Star and he asked, "Besides him, do you have any other masters?" Upon hearing this, Long Qing and Candle Star exchanged a glance. Long Jun actually didn't know about this. What did that imply? Did it mean that Guan's Dao practice exceeded Long Jun's? It could also mean that Long Jun truly might be from the past, for if he were a man living in the present, it would be impossible for him not to know the name of supporting Dao Sword Venerable. Seeing their expressions, Long Jun immediately raised his hand and began to calculate with his fingers. Candle Star suddenly relaxed, thinking that if Long Jun couldn't deduce Long Qing's backer, didn't that suggest the future might not be as he had seen it? His choice of Long Qing was not just because of Long Qing's bloodline but also because of Long Qing's background. In his view, why would supporting Dao Sword Venerable take action to shield all living beings from silent destruction God Emperor, if not to protect Long Qing? There were too many coincidences. Long Qing, pursued and hunted, receiving protection from a hidden great power, surely had unknown cause and effect. Long Qing broke the silence, asking, "If you're truly my ancestor, can you deduce how many members of the Long clan are still alive in the world?" As he grew older and more experienced, Long Qing wasn't foolish. He felt that his master had not just stumbled upon him by chance. Even if it was a coincidence, why would his master adopt him after seeing through his origins? No matter how he thought about it, he felt it was very likely that his master was also a member of the Long clan. Unable to deduce anything about Guan, Long Jun said, I have calculated. There are only you and I. He furrowed his brows and hesitated before asking, could it be that you have another master? That's right, if he hadn't taken action I would have died long ago, Long Qing replied. After hearing this, Long Jun's brow relaxed and he mused to himself, no wonder there are so many unclear areas. Long Qing no longer spoke further, instead beginning to weigh the divine skills Long Jun had mentioned. Even though he had another master to rely on, if that master was not from the Long clan, how could he drag his master into this predestined karmic retribution? No matter who your master is, I can confirm that he has no blood relation to the Long clan, and in the end, you must still bear the fate of our clan, Long Jun said to Long Qing with seriousness. He did not further inquire about Long Qing's master because he comprehended how vast the great Tao was due to his high realm. Recognizing that there is always someone stronger and that one can never be the strongest if they stop being captivated by the war court and not the strongest, it was normal for him to encounter people in matters he couldn't see through. He could at least be certain that Long Qing's master didn't harm Long Qing, and that was sufficient. Besides, he had met quite a few benefactors in his life. Long Qing fell into silence. Long Jun did not press further and instead looked towards the distance, his gaze wandering. Candlestar telepathically warned Long Qing not to agree, arguing that the war court might be strong, but there was still a way out. In his view, the fact that Silent Destruction God Emperor and the war court had not managed to capture Long Qing up to now was telling. Long Qing did not respond. Ever since Guan left, Long Qing had vowed to only make use of Candlestar and not trouble his master anymore. However, facing Long Jun, who had overwhelming strength compared to Candlestar, and knowing Long Jun's true self was suppressed by the war court, what could he rely on if he gave up the celestial dragon Dharma aspect? Most critically, the celestial dragon Dharma aspect could summon the ancestors of the Long family. Whether in a previous life or in this one, he had always longed for the Long clan at the height of its power. He wanted to know just how strong the Long clan had been to bring such suffering upon him for an entire life. The greater the hardships, the more he anticipated the capability of his own bloodline. If he could fight alongside the ancestors of the Long family, even at the cost of his life, it would be worth it. He had lived long enough and tasted both the bitterness and the joy of the human world. It was time to pursue what he had never attained before. Taking a deep breath, Long Qing's gaze fell upon Long Jun, and he declared, I am willing to cultivate the celestial dragon technique. Long Jun immediately revealed a smile, looking at him with a change in his eyes. Candlestar wanted to persuade further, but Long Jun waved his sleeve and sent him flying. At the same time, another person was watching them. It was Guan, who was far away in the Taoist field of the beginningless. Guan could feel that Long Jun indeed had the bloodline of the Long clan and that he had a strong, intricate karma. It was as if he did not belong to this world, he had forced his way in, and the heavenly Tao wanted to expel him. From the sword domain displayed by Long Jun, his cultivation level should be at the perfection realm of the heaven-encompassing free immortal. This sword domain is the rudimentary form of the Tao fruit world. When the sword domain is becoming a world, that will be the time Long Jun enters the innate golden immortal stage. However, judging by what Long Jun said, his future had already been suppressed, so his current realm wasn't so important. Even if Guan were to give him guidance now, it would likely be very difficult to change his fate. Of course, Guan would not guide him as his karma lies in the past. To interfere with the past would only court more trouble in the present. Guan was puzzling over one thing now. How was Long Zhan's lifespan evolution ability passed on to the descendants? He suspected there was another cause, perhaps the Silent Destruction God Emperor and the War Court simply mistook the son of Long Jun to have inherited Long Zhan's capabilities, thereby asserting the bloodline of the Long clan as special. Regardless, Long Jun was, after all, Guan's grandson. Though he was a reincarnation body, he could not simply ignore that. Very well. Now he had one more reason to deal with the War Court. In fact, without initiating an attack, the War Court would continue to pester him, but now that he had an unavoidable reason to make a move, he was even more determined to confront the War Court. Under the tree, Guan took out the Fate Pen and the Infinite Sword Book. There were many ways to kill an enemy. That was what he would do next, wait for Long Jun to reveal the Lord of the War Court's name. As for the celestial dragon Dharma aspect mentioned by Long Jun, Guan did not take it seriously. Long Zhan did discuss the creation of the celestial dragon reincarnation Dharma aspect in its early stages with Long Xian, But Long Xian did not actually learn the true celestial dragon reincarnation dharma aspect. Guan would also occasionally cultivate this divine skill, and he had been able to summon the reincarnation body. Long Zhan, Yang Xian, Lu Han, Ji Black Profound Emperor and others each had their own talent. Someday when Guan waved his hand grandly and the reincarnation body appeared in front of him, that moment would be terrifying, and even he himself could not judge. In the future he would continue to undergo lifespan reincarnation, which meant the celestial dragon reincarnation dharma aspect could only become increasingly more powerful. Seeing Long Jun start to transmit divine skills, Guan withdrew his divine sense and continued to sleep. He prepared to dream with the experiences of Ji, to roam the great Tao worlds of the future. To comprehend the past, to pursue the origin of the great Tao, to roam the future, was also to pursue the direction of the great Tao. Long Jun took up residence in the Third Medicine Valley, hiding his real name. As he stayed longer in the Medicine Valley, the disciples began to call him the Senior in White. He would occasionally guide the direct disciples of Long Qing in their cultivation, but more often he would play Go with others in the dojo established by Guan, contemplating the Tao in the game of Go. In a blink, 10 years quickly passed. One day Long Jun came to the heaven-repairing platform of the outer sect city. Chapter 524 Acceptance of Sword Tao Queuing? Long Jun's gaze shifted towards Wei Jian, his eyes expressing indifference. He didn't speak but turned and walked toward the end of the long queue. This small interlude did not draw much attention. Nowadays encountering great cultivators with extraordinary bearings at Supreme Sect wasn't rare, let alone those who did not queue. However, with Zuijian present, the order would not be disrupted. Zuijian's impartial and strict way had earned him immense prestige. Of course, there were those who disapproved of him, but after inquiring privately, none dared to cause him trouble because he had inherited the legacy of supporting Tao Sword Venerable, making him almost a disciple. With such a status, Supreme Sect was more than willing to raise him to the heavens. It took barely an hour before Long Jun's turn arrived, which was considered quick since Zuijian didn't waste words and allowed a quick go. Zuijian stared at Long Jun. He always felt there was something extraordinary about this man. Although he didn't think the other could lift the heaven-splitting axe, he was eager to see what the other could do. In the long years spent guarding the heaven-repairing platform, how tedious it had been. Yet Zuijian endured, believing that his actions would move the supporting Tao Sword Venerable. What he aspired to was far beyond ordinary people's imaginations. Even his descendants couldn't understand. Why keep guarding after the supporting Tao Sword Venerable had departed? Long Jun approached the heaven-splitting axe, his right hand grasping the handle. He just wanted to feel the power of the supporting Tao Sword Venerable. He had no intention of actually pulling out the axe, nor did he want to ruin anyone else's opportunity. Although he heard that the supporting Tao Sword Venerable was strong, he didn't think he was stronger than himself. Yet, as soon as he held the heaven-splitting axe, his brow instantly furrowed. So heavy. It felt like he was not holding the axe, but the entire celestial spirit great world. From the very first touch, he realized he couldn't lift the axe. The supporting Tao Sword Venerable's cultivation level was higher than his current level. Golden Immortal Tao Fruit. A storm surged in Long Jun's heart. Such a strong individual guarding Long Qing, what could be his intention? Before he didn't care, but now that he realized the supporting Tao Sword Venerable was stronger than he had imagined, he couldn't help but ponder more. Where there's a cause there's an effect. If the supporting Tao Sword Venerable was merely optimistic about Long Qing or acted out of compassion, was there a need to protect Long Qing so vehemently? After offending the battle court, why didn't the supporting Tao Sword Venerable sever all connections with Long Qing? Long Jun's brows furrowed tightly as he fell into deep thought. Zuijian, on the other hand, grew impatient and said, "If you can't pull it out, leave. Don't waste time." Upon hearing this, a glint of cold light flickered in Long Jun's eyes, giving Zuijian an inwardly startled feeling, as if he faced the horror of death for an instant. Fortunately, Long Jun didn't take it up with him and turned to leave. Zuijian heaved a sigh of relief, looking at Long Jun's departing figure with fear, yet with increased curiosity. On the other hand, far in the Taoist field of the beginningless, Guan was secretly pleased. Luckily, he had strengthened the power inside the heaven-splitting axe in advance, for if this youngster had managed to lift it, there would have been chaos. Long Jun did not belong to this era. By obtaining the heritage of the heaven-splitting axe, It was equivalent to seizing the opportunity meant for Guan's descendants. Plus, if he took the power of the axe back to the past, it could cause trouble for Guan. Everyone is striving to become stronger. I'd like to see what kind of struggle you will all end up in. Guan, reading inside his house, had his mouth curled into a smile as he muttered to himself. Zhu was practicing the Taoist unique venerate skill under the guidance of the immortal seeker. Liu was learning sword Dao from the sword annihilation ancestor. Long Qing was following Long Jun and practicing the celestial dragon Dharma aspect. And there was An Hao, still comprehending the power of the celestial Dao golden core. One day these four individuals would clash, possibly even impacting the power dynamics of the world. No, these four already represented different forces. Guan also had to intervene, not for anything else, but to prove that following him was indeed the best path. Guan, thinking of the delights, beamed even more brightly. Spring went and autumn came, 30 years flitted by in a flash. North Sea mountain ridge. Inside a valley. Sitting in meditation on the grass, Long Qing opened his eyes, and as he stopped practicing, the wind and waves in the valley ceased, with the floating flowers and plants gradually returning to tranquility. He frowned and looked up at Long Jun not far away. Long Jun was sitting on a grass heap, holding his treasure sword, his eyes revealing a faint sadness, seemingly lost in thought. Ancestor, why can't I ever fully comprehend it? Long Qing spoke up, having practiced the celestial dragon technique for decades without finding the key to its entry, which also delayed his qi absorption cultivation for decades. He was thinking of giving up. Without lifting his eyes, Long Jun said, "It's not so easy, don't be impatient. Once you master the celestial dragon Dharma aspect, your cultivation level will rise like the tide." Just as Long Qing was about to speak again, suddenly, an immense aura surged from afar, shocking the entire great heaven and earth, so powerful that even mortal spirits could feel the terrifying pressure. Long Jun looked up, a sharp light flashing in his eyes. Unexpectedly, there is such sword intent in this world, Long Jun pondered thoughtfully. Long Qing also looked in the direction the aura was coming from, but he was not surprised. Every few decades or centuries, there would always be a powerful aura erupting, either from a great power battling or from someone coming out of seclusion. He looked back at Long Jun, hoping to gain some enlightenment from the ancestor. However, before he could speak, Long Jun vanished into thin air. Long Qing couldn't help but sigh. Long Jun always appeared and disappeared unpredictably, never instructing him on how to practice the celestial dragon Dharma aspect. For some reason he suddenly thought of his master, who also disliked giving personal guidance. Could it be that his comprehension was not high enough? Thinking this, Long Qing's mood sank. On the boundless wasteland, Liya in black clothes was holding the 9 Extremes Sacred Heart sword, his body surrounded by powerful sword qi, which caused his long hair to float and sway wildly. So powerful, Liya's face showed surprise and delight. He had just reached the loose immortal realm and his sword intent had increased so much? He couldn't help but look toward the sword annihilation ancestor standing in the distance. The sword annihilation ancestor was looking at him, stroking his beard and saying, "This sword Dao originates from the Sacred Heart Sword Dao, but it is still far from the true Sacred Heart Sword Dao. However, it is enough for you to dominate this shattered great thousand world." The sword annihilation ancestor was satisfied, even pleasantly surprised with Liya's cultivation progress. How strange. This lad seemed very ordinary at first glance, only with some fate connected to the supporting Dao sword venerable enabling him to reach this point today. Why did he find it so easy to cultivate the Sacred Heart Sword Dao? It wasn't clear if it was a misconception of the sword annihilation ancestor, but he felt it wasn't that Liya's comprehension was outstanding, but rather that the Sacred Heart Sword Dao was willing to accept him. Liya was unaware of the sword annihilation ancestor's thoughts, becoming immersed in his own strength, unable to extricate himself. Just then, a figure suddenly appeared beside him, startling the sword annihilation ancestor enough to swiftly move in front of Liya. Was Long Jun. Long Jun stared at Liya, his gaze peculiar. The sword annihilation ancestor looked at Long Jun, his brows tightly furrowed, and asked in a deep voice, "What does your excellency intend to do?" Long Jun's speed was too fast, so fast that the sword annihilation ancestor could tell he was no match for him. Liya was also startled by Long Jun, instinctively raising his sword, but when he saw Long Jun he was momentarily confused. For some reason, there was a slight resemblance to Guan in Long Jun's features. Upon closer inspection it wasn't similar. Liya cursed to himself, feeling that he was being absurd once more. He tried his best not to think about Guan, fearing it would lead to laxity. "Senior, may I ask what brings you here?" Leah asked, neither servilely nor overbearingly. Long Jun asked, "Where does this sword Dao come from?" Leah replied, "Sacred Heart Sword Dao. Has Senior heard of it before?" Seeing how tense the Sword Annihilation ancestor was, Leah felt panicked inside, but he had to maintain composure on the surface. If the other party wanted to kill him with the speed displayed, he wouldn't even have time to react. Perhaps he wasn't an enemy. Chapter 525. The Matter of Creating the Universe, Sacred Heart Sword Dao? Long Jun pondered the name of this swordsmanship, his eyes flickering as if he had thought of something. Sword Annihilation ancestor pulled Leah behind himself and then faced Long Jun, with a sword intent emanating from him that changed the color of the celestial vault. Thick clouds rolled in at great speed, swiftly darkening the skies. Long Jun came to his senses, looked at Sword Annihilation ancestor and said, "Your sword Dao is strong, but you don't seem to be here in your original body." Upon hearing this, the Sword Annihilation ancestor's face showed a subtle change. Clang, Long Jun drew his sword, its blade hovering near the Sword Annihilation ancestor's neck. He drew his sword so quickly that the Sword Annihilation ancestor couldn't react in time. Leah was also frightened and immediately raised the 9 Extremes Sacred Heart Sword, standing alert. Who would have thought that after so many eras, the Supreme Demon Realm would still be clinging on to life? My sword intent can make it all the way to your true form. Do you believe me? Long Jun said indifferently, making the Sword Annihilation ancestor's complexion even uglier. Leah clenched his teeth and asked, "Who exactly are you and what do you want? Could it be that you're after my sword Dao?" Long Jun glanced at him and said, "I am also a sword cultivator, merely attracted by your sword Dao. However, it seems that you are merely Dao thieves. Whatever your schemes, remember, do not commit acts of world slaughter or you will never recover." With that, Long Jun sheathed his sword, ready to leave. Leah wanted to ask more but was stopped by the Sword Annihilation ancestor. Tiske, to think that the heaven-encompassing free immortal could act so oppressively. A sneering laugh resounded, instantly dropping the temperature between heaven and earth. Long Jun narrowed his eyes and looked up, his gaze filled with murderous intent. Deep in the ocean, the hidden spirit palace. Guan lay on a rocking chair holding a book in his hand. Deep-sea dragon Carp, Chen Luo, and Su Ling were meditating beside him, all practicing their divine skills. This kid, Guan saw Long Jun fighting with one of the Silent Destruction God Emperor's subordinates and felt his actions were a bit over the top. Knowing that the Silent Destruction God Emperor was involved with the battle court, how could Long Jun still dare to expose himself? Guan previously thought that he was just here to transmit divine skills until Long Qing was trained and would then leave. Unexpectedly, Long Jun was so impetuous. Wait, could it be that this kid had other plans? Guan became interested in this battle. He wanted to see how Long Jun would wrap things up. The subordinate of the Silent Destruction God Emperor also had the cultivation level of a heaven-encompassing free immortal, considered the most formidable among the Silent Destruction God Emperor's followers. He and Long Jun battled with the power of their realms and did not affect the celestial spirit Great World. In Li Ya's eyes, the two did not make a move, merely standing off against each other from afar. In reality, they clashed countless times in an instant, their power manifesting within their realms. Whether it was the Silent Destruction God Emperor's subordinate or Long Jun, both were cautious in their actions. They weren't wary of each other but of the strongest being that suppressed the celestial spirit Great World. In the end, the Silent Destruction God Emperor's subordinate left with his tail between his legs, and Long Jun disappeared as well. This battle would undoubtedly reach the ears of the Silent Destruction God Emperor, and Guan wanted to see how he would react. Guan planned to break through after reaching a lifespan of 100 billion years and then deal with the Silent Destruction God Emperor. Until then, he did not want the Silent Destruction God Emperor to act rashly. Clearly, the Silent Destruction God Emperor was also wary of him and had not taken action against Long Qing just yet. And so, Guan maintained his wait-and-see attitude. Several months later, the Silent Destruction God Emperor began to make his move. He transformed into a Taoist and made contact with the Sword Annihilation ancestor in Li Ya. He was actually interested in the Sacred Heart Sword Dao as well. Could it be that Long Jun did it on purpose, wanting to shift the Silent Destruction God Emperor's attention to Li Ya? With Long Jun's Dao practice, he could certainly have foretold of Li Ya's past. Even if he couldn't see through Guan, he would likely be aware of Li Ya's experiences by deducing from what others said. To know that Li Ya received Guan's inheritance would not be difficult. So, you want to use me to go up against the silent destruction god emperor? Thought Guan as he was quietly picking medicinal herbs. He wasn't angry, after all. Long Jun was his grandson, and Long Jun's scheming was also for the sake of protecting Long Qin. However, if Long Jun could see through the cause and effect of Li Ya's life, then the silent destruction god emperor could do the same. The silent destruction god emperor did not force his hand against Li Ya. Instead, he offered divine skills in exchange. The divine skills he brought forth even tempted the sword annihilation ancestor, and ultimately, the silent destruction god emperor joined Li Ya in understanding the sacred heart sword Tao. Guan felt this was truly a twisted fate. He was irreconcilable with the silent destruction god emperor, yet the god emperor had good relations with both Hao and Li Ya. The cause and effect of this world is truly complex. Having previously discussed the will of the heavenly Tao with Shenzhen, she couldn't help but admire young immortal emperor after hearing this. So, is he acting for the sake of all living beings? Shenzhen remarked. The endurance of heaven and earth was insufficient, and most people thought of reducing the number of beings to cross the tribulation, while young immortal emperor thought of expanding heaven and earth, enhancing their endurance. He not only dared to think but also dared to act. Guan, looking at the bright sun in the sky, said softly, "He indeed has the heart to protect all living beings, but more so, he is compelled to act." He could see that the immortal dynasty had already been controlled by outsiders. Wasn't the Holy Court the same? On the surface, it was the Saint Minister holding power, but in reality, there were outsiders infiltrating it, not to mention people like Silent Destruction God Emperor who could overturn the Saint Minister's power at any moment. Compelled to act? Shenzhen grew more curious, though she wasn't worried. Staying by Guan's side, she gradually adopted an attitude of watching the mortal world with a light heart. She knew that with Guan by her side, she would not be swept into human conflicts. She was more curious about the heavenly Tao and the causalities of the world, for Guan had said that everything possessed the implications of the great Tao. Guan said no more. He was waiting for the outcome for young immortal emperor. As time passed, other great heaven and earths in the universe also began to be shrouded by the oppressive force of young immortal emperor, and more great heaven and earth began to tremble, with those closer to the celestial spirit great heaven and earth moving towards it first. The movement of heaven and earth was a catastrophe for the beings within them. Mountains trembled, rivers churned, and more mortal spirits within those great heaven and earth died. At the core, the celestial spirit great heaven and earth did not face disaster but was under the pressure of the heavenly Tao, which made beings feel suppressed. Guan, seeing that the entities in the Tao fruit realm of the celestial spirit great heaven and earth did not act, speculated in his mind. Yet, the native strong forces of other great heaven and earth could not just sit back and watch. Free immortals came one after another, wanting to stop young immortal emperor. Unfortunately, before the celestial Tao golden core, the power of the free immortals appeared so insignificant. Time rapidly moved forward. Eventually, even the Taoist Zhang Zizai immortal made a move against young immortal emperor, but still they couldn't shake young immortal emperor's actions. From then on, the great powers from various great heaven and earth fled in panic, no longer daring to obstruct young immortal emperor. One day the celestial spirit great heaven and earth lost its night. When the hour came, heaven and earth remained in daylight. Inside the Taoist field of the beginningless, everyone gathered to discuss young immortal emperor's actions. Guan lay on a chair holding a book, seemingly unconcerned. He was not uninterested, he just knew the time hadn't yet come. 7 more hours had passed. Suddenly, the universe began to tremble as a sector of the great heaven and earth collided with the celestial spirit great world. The worlds began to converge, and the celestial Tao destiny was aiding in their fusion. The young immortal emperor, standing upon the celestial Tao light layer, revealed a smile. The first step was successful. He had thought the Tao fruit realm experts lurking within the celestial spirit great world would stop him, but those people did not show up. If one world could merge, merging the remaining worlds was just a matter of time. His anxiety began to dissipate. The situation had been dangerous but there were no mishaps. However, he hadn't noticed that, in the cosmic darkness above his head, a pair of gigantic eyes had opened. These eyes were seen by all beings of the universe, and every viewer was utterly terrified. What is that? My God, am I seeing things? Could it be another heavenly demon attack? Those eyes are bigger than the sun. How high must their cultivation level be? It's over. I've heard we were born during the era of transition for the universe. I never expected it to be true. The beings were frightened, and even the people within the Taoist field of the beginningless were discussing those eyes. The young immortal emperor clearly heard the discussions of the universe's beings. He looked up and was greatly startled by those eyes. Confronted with these indifferent cosmic eyes, the young immortal emperor felt ice cold. His soul was trembling. And Hao, staying within the mysterious little world, also saw those eyes through the celestial Tao golden core. He too was frightened, harboring ominous thoughts. Just as the young immortal emperor was about to speak, a terrifying figure wielding a great axe swung at him from behind, shimmering with intense light. The young immortal emperor caught a glimpse of him from the corner of his eye, his pupils dilated. Boom! With one strike of the axe, the young immortal emperor was annihilated in an instant, and the sun, manifested by the celestial Tao golden core, also evaporated. After executing the young immortal emperor, the celestial spirit god also disappeared. The giant eyes overseeing the universe slowly closed as if they had never appeared. The entire universe suddenly became silent. The beings did not know what had happened, but seeing those eyes appear and the mysterious great sun disappear led them to various speculations, yet their anxiety lingered for a long time. Candle Star stood beside Long Qing, letting out a sigh. Long Qing, unaware of the events transpiring beyond the heavens, turned to look at Candle Star and asked, "What did you see?" "I saw the will of the heavenly Tao." With the merging of the two great worlds, more and more cultivators started going to this new world for training, which to some degree lessened the fights. That great world, not as strong as the celestial spirit great world, with far fewer beings, could only submit in the face of invasion by various sects from the celestial spirit great world. Against such a backdrop, over 600 years swiftly passed. On this particular noon, Guan was in the mountain god temple in the North Sea mountain ridge, gathering medicinal herbs, maintaining the form of the mountain god with an opera mask covering his face. His actions suddenly froze. Your lifespan has broken through 100 billion years for the first time, activating the lifespan breakthrough function. Lifespan breakthrough. You can consume lifespan to obtain options for breakthrough locations that pose no threat to you and are suitable for your current realm. Both traveling to and from these locations will consume a certain amount of lifespan. This function. Guan felt this function would be very helpful to him. As his realm continued to rise, the commotion caused by his breakthroughs would also increase. At the very least, it was no longer suitable to make them in the celestial spirit great world, which could easily lead to trouble. He didn't want anyone to know his realm, including those around him, so his breakthroughs had to be secretive. But this is a real rip-off. From now on, selecting a breakthrough location will consume lifespan, activating a lifespan barrier will consume lifespan, and even improving Taoist technique will require lifespan. Guan exhaled deeply, yet he felt quite happy inside. Although he was using up lifespan in more and more ways, it also made him more secure. Lifespan, after all, could be accumulated through medicinal herbs. Although he could find a breakthrough location on his own, there would always be accidents. Guan began to look forward to his next breakthrough. He didn't use it right away, preferring to finish gathering the medicinal herbs from the mountain god temple first. Once today's tasks were done, he could make his breakthrough. Guan's mood became joyous, and he began to hasten his motions. After a while, profound mysterious Jinren walked down the mountain path and came to Guan's side, with a teapot in hand. Guan, transformed into the mountain god, seemed like a porcelain figurine in his presence. Mountain god, the great heaven and earth has become even vaster. Now the achievements of young immortal emperor are widely celebrated. What do you make of it? Profound mysterious Jinren asked softly. Although the young immortal emperor had fallen for hundreds of years, living in the deep mountains, profound mysterious Jinren received news of the outside world very slowly and had only recently learned why the young immortal emperor had perished. The young immortal emperor had tried to aid all beings in the great heaven and earth in overcoming a great calamity by trying to unite various heavens and earths, ultimately meeting celestial punishment. Such actions were worthy of admiration. Even though profound mysterious Jinren didn't understand how the heavens and earths were to unite, in an age of power struggles, he deeply revered a ruler like the young immortal emperor who would make sacrifices for all beings. Profound mysterious Jinren wanted to become such an unparalleled hero, to die for all beings. What a thrill it would be. Just thinking about it filled him with a fiery passion. Guwen replied, "He indeed achieved great deeds, and it's a pity he died." The young immortal emperor had once spent many years in the Third Medicine Valley, and Guwen had a good impression of him, but this impression was not enough for Guwen to take the risk of protecting him against the celestial spirit god. Not everyone can be a savior, but before the savior emerges, many precede them in sacrifice, their actions awakening the will of all living beings. The death of the young immortal emperor had incited the indignation of the beings of great heaven and earth. With the major sects fanning the flames, the intervention of the celestial spirit god left the leaders of these sects in despair, unclear about the nature of the world they inhabited. What hidden schemes lay behind the celestial spirit great world? More and more people felt that this world was a prison they couldn't escape, and the calamity seemed more like some powerful force compelling them to slaughter each other, making their lives seem laughable. If death was inescapable, what was the purpose of pursuing the immortal Tao? Now that profound mysterious Jinren had reached the cultivation level of the Nirvana realm, and after entering the immortal Tao realm, his confusion grew, and he knew that the so-called immortal Tao realm was still far from the omnipotence of the immortal gods. He looked at Guwen, yearning to ask, "Have you repeatedly saved all living beings and yet avoid public attention because you know the hidden truths of great heaven and earth?" He held his tongue. He was afraid of courting misfortune through careless speech. Guwen walked forward and said, "Nothing in this world is ever permanent, not even the power that seems supreme at the moment." Profound mysterious Zenren's eyes shifted upon hearing this. He sensed another meaning. The mountain god was also dissatisfied with the forces behind great heaven and earth, even possibly wanting to overthrow them. Profound mysterious Jinren felt a fire ignite within himself, deciding that he would practice harder from now on, to one day stand shoulder to shoulder in battle with the mountain god. Guwen heard his heart's voice, feeling helpless and amused. "I was just trying to comfort you." An hour later. Chapter 528. Breakthrough to Balancing Heaven. Golden Immortal Realm Perfection. Guwen looked at the 9 options before him, sinking into contemplation. These names all seemed good, but some places were forbidden. The War Spirit Holy Mansion wouldn't have anything to do with the battle court, right? Netherworld Deep Sea is out of the question. The land of reincarnation is also very dangerous. The ghost immortals of the 9 Divine Mansion are terrifying. It would be troublesome if encountered. The path of the Great Tao, that's the cosmic space beyond the world gate, linking the different great thousand worlds. Who knows what one might run into? Guwen began to weigh his options. Judging by the names was indeed difficult. His current cultivation level was not enough to deduce the origins of these place names. Clearly, these places were not part of the celestial spirit great world, they were located beyond the world gate. He pondered and pondered. Guwen decided to break through in the celestial extreme 9 heavens. With a thought, he immediately made his decision. Transferring to celestial extreme 9 heavens will cost 10 billion years of lifespan. Continue? 10 billion years? Wouldn't that be 20 billion years of lifespan back and forth? Guwen's brows furrowed. He had guessed that the lifespan breakthrough would be costly. After all, it was a lifespan function that was enabled by 100 billion years of lifespan. The consumption of lifespan would definitely be huge. Go to Wuxia world. Sight, but he had to break through. The remaining 80 billion years of lifespan should be enough for his breakthrough. Now he could only hope that this place of breakthrough was worthy of the lifespan he was about to spend. After a moment's hesitation, Guwen chose to continue the transfer. As soon as the thought settled, he felt an irresistible force envelop him. He didn't feel uncomfortable but rather felt an indescribable sense of profound mystery. His eyes involuntarily closed and his senses went numb. After a while, Guwen felt his feet touch the ground, his senses returned to normal in an instant, and he opened his eyes, his pupils dilating. What entered his sight was a boundless sea of clouds, the sky a deep blue, so high it made one feel the vastness of the great heaven and earth, and one could only feel an infinite awe standing in it. Guwen opened his mouth, filled with shock. Such dense Tao spiritual qi. The Tao spiritual qi here was denser than that in the universe outside the celestial spirit great heaven and earth, and purer too, without a hint of impurity. Guwen felt that the 10 billion years of lifespan were well spent. He immediately activated the lifespan barrier to prevent the passing of other powerful beings. The lifespan breakthrough would take him to a safe place, but it didn't mean this place would always be safe. A series of prompts quickly pop up before his eyes. You have practiced chi absorption cultivation for 100 billion years. You forcefully attempt to break through to the heaven-balancing golden immortal realm using the great achievement of the great Tao great freedom as you wish Bible. You begin to cross the tribulation. You do not survive the celestial Tao 3 flowers void great tribulation. The tribulation has failed. You have practiced chi absorption cultivation for 200 billion years. You forcefully attempt to break through to the heaven-balancing golden immortal realm using the great achievement of the great Tao great freedom as you wish Bible. You begin to cross the tribulation. You do not survive the celestial Tao 3 flowers void great tribulation. The tribulation has failed. Heaven-balancing golden immortal. As expected, it takes 100 million years for one tribulation attempt. Guan adjusts his mentality and starts to anticipate how strong the heaven-balancing golden immortal will be. Finally, all the prompts drop and there's still no success in crossing the tribulation. Invest another 100 billion years. Guan stares expressionlessly at the prompts. After failure, continue. 100 billion years of lifespan. Another 100 billion years of lifespan. Finally, the prompts before Guan start to change. You have practiced chi absorption cultivation for 56 billion years. You forcefully attempt to break through to the heaven-balancing golden immortal realm using the great achievement of the great Tao great freedom as you wish Bible. You begin to cross the tribulation. You survive the celestial Tao 3 flowers void great tribulation. The tribulation has been successful. Your cultivation level has broken through to the early stage of Hengtian golden immortal realm. You have practiced chi absorption cultivation for 100 billion years. Your cultivation level has increased. Finally, the breakthrough is successful. Guan lets out a sigh of relief. No matter how many years of lifespan are spent, as long as the breakthrough is successful, it's worth it. He doesn't stop there but chooses to continue investing lifespan. One breath to rise to balancing heaven golden immortal realm perfection. In the end, he still had over 280 billion years of lifespan left, leaving 100 billion for transmission back. The remaining over 180 billion years of lifespan couldn't possibly get drained by the lifespan barrier. Guan's mood becomes joyful. His lips curl up in a smile. The mighty Tao spiritual chi floods into his body. As always, the lifespan barrier extracts Tao spiritual chi and Tao rules in an unpredictable manner, making it impossible for the outside world to discern where the source lies. The sea of clouds in Guan's vision begins to churn more and more magnificently. As the Tao spiritual chi enters his body, Guan feels an unprecedented comfort. His physique, from the outside in, everything is being purified. He gradually closes his eyes, immersed in this extreme pleasure, unable to extricate himself. The boundless sea of clouds becomes more turbulent, majestic and powerful, with no living creature's figure sweeping through. This world seems to have only the sea of clouds. Insights about the heaven-balancing golden immortal realm begin to burst forth in the depths of Guan's mind. His golden immortal Tao fruit also undergoes changes. Within the lifespan barrier, Guan emits a colorful strong light all over, barely revealing his figure. Tao spiritual chi enwraps him like flood dragons, with faint streaks of flowing light, which are the Tao rules in motion. A long while. Suddenly, the sea of clouds at the horizon lifts, like a huge wave wanting to envelop the sky, or as if some enormous creature is about to break out, instilling fear in all who see it. Guan then looked towards the celestial spirit god under the world gate, similar to the celestial extreme god he met at the celestial extreme 9 heavens, with the cultivation of a heaven-balancing golden immortal, yet far from reaching the perfection realm. Finally, Guan no longer felt pressure when facing the celestial spirit god. A smile appeared on his face, his mood becoming even more cheerful. Even though his cultivation level surpassed the celestial spirit god, Guan did not immediately plan to act against the celestial spirit god since there wasn't deep enmity between them, and there was clearly a much larger force behind the celestial spirit god. He would deal with the silent destruction god emperor first. That individual schemed against the Long clan and him, creating an irreconcilable deadly feud. The celestial spirit god at most differed in stance, acting out of their duty, not because of Guan, whereas the silent destruction god emperor acted out of self-interest. Guan stepped forward, enjoying the night scenery of the forest. The tiny insects in the dark appeared so vivid. Their world was also vivid, bearing similarities to the world humans lived in. Busy with survival, entwined with cause and effect. Great thousand world, great heaven and earth, little world, and the world of insects. All these worlds had their strengths and weaknesses, but all followed a set of rules. In the darkness, a mantis slowly emerged from beneath a leaf, creeping closer to a cicada. At dawn, the sunlight broke through heaven and earth. Between the mountains lay a lake enshrouded in fog, resembling a paradise from the human world. Leah stood by the lake, holding the 9 Extremes sacred heart sword, his gaze fixed on a man in black robes in the distance, his hair disheveled, resembling an evil demon. The man in black robes was actually the transformation of the silent destruction god emperor, who was pondering the ways of the sacred heart sword Tao. Leah had always been wary of this man, but the sword annihilation ancestor dared not drive him away. This man even taught him divine skills so he could only endure in silence. Watching the man in the black robe enthralled, Leah was very curious. What was this man's background? What was he scheming? Why did he want to study the sacred heart sword Tao but not go to the river of sword Tao? The sword annihilation ancestor had once taken Leah to the river of sword Tao. The splendor and dazzle of it had left Leah with unforgettable memories. He really wanted to visit the river of sword Tao again, but the sword annihilation ancestor said that with his cultivation level, he could not stay long in the river of sword Tao. He wondered if junior brother Gu had ever been there. Suddenly Leah thought of Guan. Although Guan had revealed his true identity in his heart, Guan would always be his junior brother. Chapter 532, Ascending to Yellow Heaven, Emperor of Absolute Thought. Leah struggled to adjust his emotions. He looked at Sword Annihilation Ancestor, cautiously asking, "Master, are you all right?" Although the image of his master had collapsed in his heart, the many years of guidance were a kindness he could not forget. Sword Annihilation Ancestor came back to his senses. He took a deep breath and said, "I'm all right, but you must forget today's events or it will bring about great trouble." He knew very well how terrifying the silent destruction god emperor was, and this one was the original entity. Having the capability to suppress the silent destruction god emperor so easily, the Tao practice of that being just now. Sword Annihilation Ancestor couldn't help but tremble. He even dared not think deeper. The pressure Leah felt was far less than that of Sword Annihilation Ancestor. He didn't feel that Sword Annihilation Ancestor was too cowardly. After all, considering his relationship with Guan would definitely take care of him. Diske, junior brother Gu sure knows how to scare my master, truly not giving any face. Leah felt emotional. He also couldn't help but wonder, just how high was junior brother Gu's cultivation level? How could such an unrivaled powerful existence be so easily defeated by junior brother Gu? Leah couldn't figure it out. He just couldn't understand. How many years had Guan cultivated, and how many hardships had he endured to become so powerful? Leah couldn't imagine. Go to Wuxia world. Sight Sword Annihilation Ancestor also couldn't imagine, even as a profound Yuan-free immortal, in his knowledge, apart from the celestial spirit god guarding the world gate, the silent destruction god emperor was the most powerful being. Previously, supporting Tao Sword Venerable had exterminated the incarnation of the silent destruction god emperor, and when the silent destruction god emperor himself arrived, it frightened supporting Tao Sword Venerable to leave the celestial spirit great world, undeniably proving the power of supporting Tao Sword Venerable. But now, Sword Annihilation Ancestor could accept the defeat of the silent destruction god emperor, but could not accept that the silent destruction god emperor had no power to fight back. The celestial spirit great world became a frightening place in the eyes of Sword Annihilation Ancestor. The once center of the great thousand world indeed hid unfathomable and terrifying cause and effect. He dared not be curious about who that being was, only hoping he could forget. Having lived for so many years, He knew very well that even without speaking, remembering certain things could also bring boundless trouble. On the other side,